Okay, everybody, thank you. I'll start the meeting. It's the 2nd of April, still sunny, and it's the first meeting of April for the Overview and Scrutiny meeting. Actually, it'll be the only meeting for April for the service. I don't know why I said that, really. I was just trying to make it sound interesting. I should have just said hello and let's get going. First item is apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Whaley Ho and also from Andy Smith, with commitment in London. And he sent some chap, Doug Pullen, to speak on his behalf. I want to answer a question on his behalf. Any declarations of interest from anybody on the committee? Leona?
No, or 6 active literature. I have been to some mummy and baby classes and
all right. All right, well, we support that. We support, don't we? We all support that. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
I've been with it.
Okay, thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting to agree. There is a typo. Is on page 5 at paragraph 6 been pointed out to us. The UK shared prosperity fund. That's something slightly different because it's US KPF. That needs to be corrected. We've discussed some matters arising which we can't discuss at this part of the meeting. But is somebody willing to agree those with that typo corrected? Thank you. In favour? Yeah, very good, thank you. Next item is the health matters, and as you know, I represent this committee at Staffordshire, the Healthcare Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And my short report there, unfortunately, it's a short report because there wasn't a great deal to say. There's a great deal in the reports that we had on mental health support for the schools, and it's a good report, a lot of good information there. I recommend people look at that on the links on the county's website. Di, please. Councillor Evans has got a question, I know.
Yes, I'm delighted to see that at last it's been recognised that mental health is such an important issue with children, because we've raised that on a number of occasions. And looking at the percentage of children that between 8 and 16 is very high. But what concerns me now in another setting is that I am seeing children now that are under 8, 6 years old, and I hope that eventually we get back to the source of when it starts with these children, because it really needs to be addressed in future with all children that are experiencing some mental health problems, because if it isn't addressed, as I've said before, when it first happens, it just gets worse and worse and escalates, and that doesn't help anybody, because it doesn't help people in school, and it certainly doesn't help parents, and it doesn't help in particular the child concerned. So I do think it's important that we continue to look at that and look at younger age as well.
Okay. Miles, and then Ashley.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with that, and I think it's quite a shocking statistic there, isn't it? 20.3% 16-year-olds. That stats for England. Were there any stats discussed for Staffordshire? I've seen that there was.
Yes, in the report. Yes. Okay. There are very good reports. A lot of detail on the witnesses that gave evidence. They were very good there. I think that also answered a question that wasn't asked. Well, it wasn't asked at the time they answered it, as it were, but it was going to be asked, which is about the definition of mental health, because that's, you must know, that's an issue generally about as the definition become wider than it will be or whatever, and they're aware of that. So, but the work that they're doing in the schools, I think, has been, it was excellent, as far as I can see. I do recommend those reports if you can skim through them. They're always very technical, I find, but if you look through what progress has been made in Staffordshire, I think we're doing better than, or Staffordshire is doing better than some other areas. It was good. Leon, yeah.
Following on from what you've said, actually, if you could push for some more localized data, so instead of Staffordshire, but also for literal, it'd be really great to see how we are doing compared to other areas where we can improve on. It's something I've also stressed on health and wellbeing, but and which that would be great as well.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? On the work programme there for the Health and Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee, That's all past reports, and there isn't a meeting on the 7th of April. That's been cancelled, so there's no more meetings this municipal year. Work programme will be decided at the next meeting, although there are some on the horizon. I just like to say that I wasn't there, unfortunately, because there is another meeting. I'm not there to thank the chair of that particular Scrutiny committee, who's with us tonight, because he wears lots of different hats, and I thought he was a very good chair, and I think we've made some progress, and it's always been a very useful health overview and Scrutiny committee. It's just a schlepping up to Stafford that puts you off, but at least there's no diversion now to get back by Penkridge. If I'd have been there at another meeting, I would have thanked Councillor Richard Cox personally, as we tend to do it with your district here. Agenda item 5 then is the Overview and Scrutiny Task Group meeting, which was the meeting of the Health Overview and Scrutiny Task Group. I asked Leona to say a few words on it first.
So County Councillor Sylvester Hall gave us an update on Simon Johnson birthing unit and also the development of the. So in regards to Simon Johnson birthing unit, in summary, there's a decision it's likely to make it permanently closed due to staffing and not enough people about. If the data, again, in localized data, I think it'd be interesting to see how many births from Lichfield districts are going to other areas rather than because we can see Lichfield is growing with more and more young families as well, growing population as well. I had an update actually from County Councillor Sylvester Hall today, where members may know as well, may not know, there was a board meeting to this consultation, and today she emailed me to inform that there is a decision to go ahead with a consultation. So I'll share a link to the task group as well as I received today, and hopefully we can get as much local responses as possible. I think that'd be really good if we give them a push as well. And an update, we had updated Councillor Sylvester had also updated me in regards to the Brentwood building being centre. We're just waiting for more updates on that. Is basically, I think as a task, we wanted to know a timeline of events, funding, exactly what is actually going on, because it has been going on for quite a long time, and we're really anxious to push it because it should have been happened. So I have been informed that a hybrid planning application is in place, and it should be this month for April, and the construction should be by the end of 2027. So I think we need to keep an eye.
End of when?
2027.
No, I misheard you, because I thought you said 2027.
No,
Oh no, I thought you said 2027. But we've been promised to be open this year, you see, 2025. So did I mishear you, or was that what?
I think you've fed up with
Okay, thank you.
construction. We need to look at that in more detail. That we've received, and that's basically what. So since the task group, that's the item. I'll just share with task group as well.
Okay, that's only 17 years since they were promised it. Yeah, that's pretty good. So,
a couple of comments, if I may. In terms of the birthing unit, I thought there was some really interesting information that came out to the committee, and particularly from Councillor Richard Henshaw as a former GP, and he was sort of exercised about the fact that women are being pushed either towards home births or towards birthing at a general hospital. And so the little bit in the middle, the midwife-led birthing units, that seems to be fading out of the picture. And of course, he made the point from his own experience that a home birth is slightly more risky than a midwife-led unit birth, which is more risky than a general hospital led birth. So, that was interesting comparison to look at. But one thing that came out during the discussion, I asked the question, where is the nearest midwife-led unit for women in this area if they want to give birth at a midwife-led unit? And we were told there's one at Queen's Hospital in Burton. And I think we were all quite surprised by that. We didn't realise that was the case. So, why aren't more women being led towards the midwife-led unit at Burton rather than the you know, the more formal hospital setting, that's something that we'd certainly want to follow up. As far as the Burntwood Health Centre is concerned, it's not really the Burntwood Health and Wellbeing Centre that was shut down over a year ago by the Integrated Care Board, but it's the new Burntwood Health Centre, and you, Chair, are quite right. If it is 2027, end of 2027, that this is likely to be open, that will be 17 years after it was promised. And the most recent date that we've been told, and the consultation, the discussion, the information coming through from the ICB and from the County Council is just very, very poor. We were told that this health centre would be open by the end of this year. And yet, you know, April, and there is no sign of a application yet, or certainly not one that's being made.
Just to be clear, that one will be presented, ready for consideration this month. An application.
This was shared with the task group.
Yeah.
This month.
No, that's
Yes,
be clear.
the hybrid planning.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I hope, but I'm not very optimistic, I have to say. What has concerned me, and I've discussed this with the Chief Executive, is that Lichfield District Council has put £1.1 million extra into the pot for the new health centre. We thought, first of all, because the delays, and I think we were given an indication that the delay, self-inflicted, has caused the additional costs. But looking at it, it's about the green criteria and making sure that the new health centre, all new NHS buildings over a certain value, have got to be compliant with that sort of environmental instruction. But that's been around since 2008.
2009.
2009. So why wasn't that factored into the business plan initially? I mean, it seems to me that LDC has stepped in to plug a funding gap of £1 billion over and above what we were told was in place in terms of the business plan. You know, so it's not been well documented. It's not been sort of open and transparent as the process as we'd want it to be. And my concern is that £1.1 million, we would have found lots of ways of spending it directly for the benefit of Lichfield District residents, rather than putting that community infrastructure levy money into a health centre which theoretically had already got the funding in place. It's just very disappointing, and certainly the community of Burntwood are just left in the dark.
Okay. Following you were, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just, I think Leona wanted to respond to that, so.
Increases, as we know, all the time.
Yes.
And if we look at 2027, restriction to be complete, that cost will increase.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think will be really good for us as a task to push and to look into this, you know, if we can. But of course, it comes be quickened or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I want to come back to the birthing units because
Sorry.
That discussion before we
Okay.
go on to
Yes.
that.
Sorry.
I'm glad that Leona's mentioned that there will be a consultation and that the Council Sylvester Hall will share that with the task group. Because I've had a number of people approach me about what's happening with the birthing unit at Samuel Johnson. The people who will now have to travel to Burton from, you know, areas of Lichfield that are quite far away from Burton. I understand there's an extra risk with the wife unit. If something goes wrong, then you have to jump in an ambulance, or the wife has to jump in an ambulance, you have to fall behind the car to get up there. And I think encouraging people to go to the birthing unit run by the midwives up there might be less threatening than going to the main hospital. But I think this consultation needs to be much more publicised than the alleged previous consultation, which none of the people who spoke to me knew anything about, and I certainly didn't know anything about. So I think if there's going to be a consultation, it needs to be properly publicised and shared with the community in Lichfield so that they can have their say.
Yeah, I'd followed up the first consultation with the ICB asking about what happens next, and it's this due diligence, I'll call it, but it's not the correct phase, the system they go through to make sure that consultation is correct. Now, I don't know whether because it's not been in the ways that it could have been, I suppose, that they're having another consultation, but I'll wait and find out. The task group hopefully will continue looking at this, as with the new health centre. That would be good. Jamie, I thought.
Thank you. I note in the outcomes that Councillor Sylvester Hall has agreed to look at the reasons for the delays in 2027. Does seem like a long time, and the additional SIL investments from LDC. Surely an additional 2 years will give the ICB board sufficient time to raise their own money and spend the infrastructure money that's raised for the Lichfield District Council. I've raised it in a number of places. Don't know what time period they have to spend it, or whether they can just sit on it for another 10 years and take the interest off that, or whether it sits in our accounts. So at least in the next 2 years, we get £80,000 to invest in Lichfield infrastructure.
Hopefully the chair's making note of that, so that could be a question that Strip can look at. I think it's important. I mean, it was going to be 2025, and we're in this very room.
Emergency
old
gap fill.
2023. That's what will happen.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Surely they can raise their own funding.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Okay. Well, it appears to be in deficit, so I'm not sure if that's the case. But John,
a question that if Burton wasn't the hospital that they'd been recommended to go to, where would they have gone? What's the other alternative?
now Burton is recommended. I mean, it's a Lichfield. They can't. If there's a complication that a mother giving birth would have to go to Burton, but they can't deal with complicated cases. I'm using a term that I'm sure medical profession don't use, but complicated cases, they have to go to Burton. Now, if that happens, you're in Lichfield, you've got to go to Burton, you go in an ambulance, but your partner, husband, whatever, will be following in a vehicle because they can't go in the ambulance. So people then have chosen to go to Burton in the first place rather than going to Lichfield. And there's also the problem with the, midwives, that there's a shortage of midwives because there's not enough experience for them to do that. But that's all in those reports, and there's this further consultation. They'll have the more detailed reports. So it is interesting reading, I have to say, and I've had some good presentations at the Health and Care Committee. Councillor Evans-Dyke.
Yeah, I've brought this up loads of times, so everybody will know that about the birthing unit. And it does concern me that this purpose-built unit is there. We're told that there is a facility at Burton with a birthing unit, but why can't those midwives be in Lichfield rather than in Burton? Because it concerns me, the distance that is required. If you live in Burtwood, for instance, it's an awful long way to go right up the A38 to Burton. In the meantime, if you've got a problem, anything can happen. And so I hope that all these issues will be addressed, and the fact that that unit is there empty, not being used for anything. It hasn't been for a couple of years.
I have to point out that the reason why it's part of the reason why it's empty is that people don't choose to go there. They don't take that risk. They want to go to Burton. I mean, they don't take the risk of going there and then have to go to Burton. That's what I understand. John and then Paul, then I think, by the looks of it.
Just thinking that when if I ever have to go to hospital, I'm always directed to Good Hope, because Good Hope tends to become part of Birmingham hospitals, whereas Burton comes under Burton and Derby. Do you think there's been like a thing where people tend to push you towards a different area? Because I don't know whether nurses can come from a Burton hospital to technically a Birmingham and whatever hospital.
Well,
can there be that?
They haven't got the customers. This is it. So they don't want to go to a place where they can't practice what they're training to do and get the experience. So, but yeah, if you're that way, and I know from other areas, you tend to go towards Good Hope, and other areas towards Burton. I mean, we'd like to have an ambulance. I said, no, I go in there, take me to there or there, which they did. But then again, that's me. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to make a sort of a general point about Samuel Johnson, because that's a fantastic facility we have here on our doorstep, which is, as Diana's identified, in respect to the birthing unit, and generally I understand there's capacity there. And I guess we've got a growing population, as Leona referred to. We've got an older population compared to the national demographics, who find it difficult to go to Burton, to go to Good Hope. So I just think all of us, and especially those who are on forums and have direct contact to the local health system, whether it's the ICBs or whatever, just need to be actively promoting that facility. At one time, it was under threat. And obviously the NHS is going to go through a lot of reform, and I think there's a real opportunity to bring, as we bring services closer to the community to make better use of facilities, day surgery, diagnostics, testing, all these things.
Opportunities now, isn't it? Yes. Okay, the only thing I want to say was that I think it still refers in here to Janice Sylvester Hall being a witness, but actually she's a member, and that's what it says at the beginning now in the list. She is a member of the task group as per our constitution. Well, sorry, we all voted in July last year for that to be the case, but I don't think it's made it to the constitution. I'm trying to find out from officers what happened to it, because that is the situation where a representative from the Healthcare and Overview Scrutiny Committee or County Council is a member of the Health Scrutiny of the council, district council, borough council, but we've, rather than just on this committee, having the health task group, Janice Sylvester Hall is now a member there. So that's the situation. I'm still trying to find out the response, but I haven't seen one yet. Okay, if I move on to agenda item 6 then, thank everybody for their comments there. Thank you, Lone, and the task group members for doing what they've done so far. Good start, I think. The next one is, I won't say just a briefing paper, but it is just a briefing paper. But if you've got any questions or information you want about this, we'll allow that now. Does anybody want to refer to it, bring it or not? It just sort of pretend it's just a briefing paper. We won't get involved, but we'll pass the questions on. So don't worry, we'll do that. Any members got any issues they want to raise? Or got any questions? I'll make a note, and we'll make a note, and we'll pass them on. Yeah, Paul, please.
Yeah. I was well, the first one I was going to say, I thought was impressive about the amount of activity that's going on under the active Lichfield community. So I think that's to be commended. I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised about the level of activity. And then that
I've just remembered it's the leader who's supposed to be answering questions if need be.
Okay.
So if he's here instead of Andy Smith, but he may not know the answers. Sorry, Paul.
I might not know the answer.
I thought no, we'll let
Taz and some other people are here as well to help.
Don't worry about it. It's in a briefing paper.
I've made the trip especially, Chair, to come and be with you this evening.
Oh, look at the volunteers now. We've got 4. Sorry, I'm going to volunteers. I'm full of them under the table. I'm trying. Paul, it's your audience now.
Yes, I've got a question for Doug. I've just got a question. Well, first one's a comment. With the level of that engagement, which is impressive, and obviously we've got our new leisure centre coming on board, using that as a vehicle of promoting the leisure centre. Obviously, there are a lot of people here are engaging with leisure, so it's a really good way of, whether it's leaflets, whether it's some discount, so that they can just join the leisure centre. So people are nodding. Is that actually something that's been considered or can be considered? Yeah.
I think, and I will defer to Taz in a second because she's a lot closer to this than I am. But I think you're right. It is a useful vehicle to drive people to the leisure centre. But I think critically, and I think what Active Lichfield is really about, is ensuring we meet people where they are in terms of their leisure activity. So if you're perhaps not quite ready to go and get on a treadmill and knock out 10k in every evening, or do the weights, or do swimming, or play squash, actually maybe you just need to get out and walk a couple of times a day, and then actually it's that sort of very low activity, just increasing that marginally, which I think will see the biggest gains for a lot of people. And that's, we touched on mental health earlier on in terms of the health briefing. Actually, whilst we don't hold the statutory responsibility for public health, we do hold the keys to a lot of the determinants of public health, particularly around mental health. So I think what Taz and her team have been doing in terms of addressing that has been absolutely brilliant. And if you've got several hours, Taz will tell you about a number of the ways, of the individuals' lives that have been touched, at a very sort of low cost method, but it just requires someone to think about it and in a really careful way.
Yeah.
So lovely feedback there. We've seen that, yeah.
And we'll just sort of follow on. I take the point out that it's localised, but if someone is dipping their toe into leisure for the first time, then that's the next step might be to get more actively, and then it really gets embedded into their lifestyle. And then therefore,
we get
maybe joining the leisure centre might be.
Get to item number 8, the LWM business plan. I'm sure we'll be saying yes. Let's take out a sign up, a subscription model for the leisure centre as soon as someone dips their toe
And-
in, yes.
And the other point I was just going to make, just take the opportunity to make this point again, all this good work, we've got the local plan consultation going through. One of the proposals that we made is that we have a health policy, a local health policy, which might, for example, it could give us some levers if there are a number of fast food outlets coming forward for planning permission, number of levers to control that, number of levers to promote some healthy living premises if when they come forward for planning permission. So yeah, I just mentioned that again. That's something I think as part of our local plan consultation we should seriously consider. A lot of other local authorities do have a local health policy embedded, and that helps them with their planning.
So I wouldn't agree entirely with you, but I do think if we can provide as much choice as we can, particularly about the being able to lead a healthy lifestyle, then I think that's really important, particularly in terms of building in the ability for people to walk from their home, for instance, to the nearest KFC. No, to their schools, to the shops, to the bus. That's really, really important for them. I don't know if Sal, Sarah, or Kerry wants to add anything. They're the ones close to this.
In relation to the new leisure centre,
Yeah.
it's definitely something we're thinking about how we get people who are not necessarily going to think of that as their first point of call to do activity, how we get them through the doors. So obviously having the community room there is definitely something we could utilise. And we also thought about it in regards to young people and having access to the 3D pictures in pretty much the same way we do at Burntwood. So it's just giving them access to it that they might not necessarily think that'd be their first place to go, but it's all about that gradual, like said, like that gradual integration into that environment that can be quite intimidating for those who are inactive. And it's how we do that in a sensitive way that meets their needs.
What Taz has just kind of articulated there is, I think, one of the real unique selling points of the programs that Taz and her team deliver. It is that pastoral support around the individual to help build their confidence to take, be it the first step or the next step. So I know Taz and the team are absolutely committed that when they are interacting with residents, their aim is to get them to have a lifetime of positive associations with being active and healthy, no matter what point they're starting from. They come via these programs.
I don't think it'd have been better calling it slightly more active. Next year, more, maybe not. Sue, please.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a couple of questions, but a comment as well. We've previously been talking about hospitals and hospital settings, but if the pyramid were turned upside down, this is where you can really address health inequalities and make a big difference to people's lives and prevent them having to go to sort of higher tier settings. So I mean, it's particularly useful to see how you work with social prescribers, for example, and they are making a big difference, and they refer not only to active Lichfield but also to community and voluntary organisations as well, and that does make a huge difference. I think we were told that loneliness, the impact on health, is as bad as smoking 20 cigarettes a day, something like that. And so addressing those sort of social isolation issues are really important. But I'm pleased to read the briefing paper because I'd never heard of Golden Lives. So can you tell me, is it just happening at David Garrett Gardens, or is it happening elsewhere in the district? And I'd also, just over the page, I'd just like to know a little bit more about play streets. I think great idea, and it would be lovely to see that working even as a pilot somewhere within the district. But where are we with that, the development of a play street?
I'm going to straight at Taz on this. I'm thinking on the play streets one, and then maybe you can do Golden Life. So play streets is something we've been trying to get in place for a long time, and really it's about empowering residents to be able to give them all the things they need to make sure the road's closed off legally and safely, and give them the tools to do that. So it's not Lichfield District Council going around and putting an event on, but it's giving residents the tools to actually do it themselves. I think it'd be fair to say it's got off to a mixed start. Some residents don't like the idea of kids playing out in the street next to them, so there's been a little bit. Am I allowed to say that? It's been not breaking the confidence. It's been a surprise, and so for me, I mean, I've been a massive supporter of this for a while, and it genuinely shocked me that some neighbours would want to stop that happening in their own street. But you know, I get there's different feelings about it. But I think for us that's, and again, you know, leisure doesn't have to be in leisure centres. If your kids can play out in the street, you know, as long as it's not the A5 or, you know, the M6 or something, then actually that's really helpful, and you can get it on a regular basis. And again, back to those social connections, and you know, it's not about going and running a marathon, it's about getting outside and playing a bit of football. So that's something we've done with the national organisation, isn't it, to help bring those tools in. Off to a bit of a rough start, but we're ploughing through and we will get there. And we've had a few roads already make applications, so we're now just kind of doing a bit more outreach on it.
Can I ask, is that spread across the district too?
Yeah, so a couple of them have been Burnwood already. Yeah. And Golden Lives.
Golden Lives. So Golden Lives is it's a newish project that we recognised through the health and wellbeing programme that there was people who wanted to do activity but couldn't get to where we were in community centres and in parks. So we did a little bit of consultation and work with Bromford Housing and started off at David Garrett Gardens. We've also started one at Francescan View, and we're in talks with Richardson Court to do some work there. We've already been and spoke to residents there. So that's the next one that we're going to be doing. And the aim, I'm actually having other residential homes come to me and ask me about the programme. So we're starting to have other conversations and to grow that. And we've seen a huge impact on those residents who are quite socially isolated, who haven't been able to do any activity or haven't had the confidence to meet others within their residential home or area, actually grow relationships. Those that might have language barriers or have been able to build friendships in a way that is kind of seen as a level field, if you like, where they do the same activity. And we've also seen an increase in their activity levels and becoming more active, therefore helping with their mobility and also with their kind of activity levels with like other people within their home. So yeah, it's been going really well.
I've got Miles and then John next, but can I just come in with on the play streets, which you're optimistic there are many play streets in the districts is what you're hoping for. But I remember many years ago when new housing estates were built, and this was going to be the play area for the children, close to the houses so they can see them. And as soon as people moved in, and then you get the equipment, they don't want it near them. And I remember as a kid growing up, we always played in the green around the council estate there. And people complain because you've got a playing field about 100 yards away, because meters haven't been invented, about 100 yards away. And nobody wanted to go there. They wanted to be there outside their houses. So you're up against it, but I wish you well. I know Councillor Smith is going to be asking for one on the A5 in Fazeley, but first I've got mine.
Thank you, Chair. But echo what others have said. I think there's some really good work here, some really good initiatives. But just had a couple of questions on the play streets. Am I right in thinking we're still at the stage where people are applying and suggesting roads for it? Are there any timescales in mind for when it might go live or when the first one happens?
You're a lot closer to that.
Struggling, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've had quite a few expressions of interest, which has been really positive. And we have it's again that relationship building with that resident. So we start off by meeting them, talking them through what a play street is. We've then gone out to consultation with about 2 or 3 streets, and we have hit those challenges, of which we're working through them. I'd like to think one is potentially imminent, but I wouldn't to put in an application. We then have to go through the Secretary of State road closure and then take obviously follow those processes, but we're hoping that we have one pretty much lined up to put an application in, and we have another expression of interest which seems quite positive, so fingers crossed. But again, it's working through those challenges, and the resident has to be comfortable and confident to do it as well, and we don't want to force any residents to feel that they need to and have to, and a lot of that has been because of the challenges that they've been facing has been the reason why that's not then progressed. So
I assume you only accept requests from people who actually live in the street that they want. Yeah, so Is that it?
I just one or two others. On Us Girls, which I think is also an excellent initiative. I'd seen more comms, I think, on community events, and I've seen some on Play Street, but I hadn't seen as much LDC comms, if any, on Us Girls. Is any planned, or is that part of the idea for expanding that?
Yes, so Us Girls, we do promote those out into the community. We do a lot of work in primary schools and taster sessions to capture the right young people and the right girls, and then we transition them into the community. So we do openly promote the sessions, and it is a session for anybody. We do a lot of targeted promotion within schools, and we've got some really strong links there.
I was just going to say on that, I think the point of the Us Girls programme is that it is very, very targeted, and we're very, very keen, I know, particularly in terms of the funding of it, to make sure that it's reaching the right people, and perhaps
it's not just a scattergun kind of.
Yeah, and if I can say this, perhaps not the people who are just tuned into what's going on locally and is free, and therefore get their girls into it. This has to be ultra focused and really making sure we reach the most vulnerable people to make sure they're coming through that pathway.
Okay. And one last one, if that's all right. Towards the end of the report, it says on benefits and outcomes, page 26. It's talking there about potential health benefits and then preventing antisocial behaviour potentially. I just wondered how those things are being monitored, or if you're taking steps to try and monitor those outcomes.
So we have the data sets available to us for most of those things, I think. So obviously Sports England measure or track activity levels. So we've got a baseline from at some point, Active Lives, there we go, Active Lives survey. That is absolutely trending upwards and has been for the last few years in terms of those, and it's something like those who spend 150 minutes a week in activity or something. So that's there, and then obviously antisocial behaviour and crime, etc., is tracked through various other places, and obviously the work that we're doing with around 6 will help feed into that as a sort of a key data set. Sorry, no, I was going to say the great irony is that, of course, the kids playing outside, in some people's mind, is antisocial behaviour. It probably gets reported as such. So there's a slight irony in that.
Sorry, all I was going to add is, as well as that kind of more strategic outcome data, I think hopefully you'll see from this report as well, we're really focused on capturing those qualitative case studies, because they're really powerful in terms of the stories of the difference these programmes are making to individuals as well.
On this briefing paper, I've still got John, Di, and Jamie. So John was next, and then Di, and then.
Yeah, just a question. I mean, that when I was young, the only place you could play was in the street. You didn't have anything else. But the difference being is there weren't so many cars around those days. And I'm just curious as to know how you can deal with that issue of a lot of families having 2 cars, 3 cars, whatever else, wanting to have access to the street and so on and so forth. I mean, there's an advert on the television whereby there's some kids playing in the street and the guy shouts, "You can't play that ball here." And then he goes and puts some playing field together so that people could go and play. So I'm curious to know, great as it sounds, as much as I love to be able to do it when I was young, how do you make that work? And what's a typical example of a street that you would close down?
I think I'll try and give you the high level answer as ever, and then let Taz do the detail. The idea is that it's shut down for a very defined and small period of time on a specified time. So is it a Saturday morning between 10 and 12, or a Sunday afternoon between 3 and 4? And that's the important bit about getting all the neighbours on. It's got to be a sort of a community, a sort of a collective effort to say, actually, we're all just going to agree that we want our road to be shut down for an hour in the afternoon on a weekend or something, and it's accepted by the community that's what's going to happen. I think probably that is the issue that Taz and the team are hitting, which is some people don't think about the bigger picture, perhaps. Yeah, please. Sorry, Taz.
Within a play street as well, there can be, you're not restricted to not being able to come in and out of your street. There is a process that residents and volunteers can follow. So if a resident wants to leave for whatever reason, there is a process of a whistle being blown, all the children move to the side, and that vehicle is walked to the end of the road closure, and then unable to leave. And the same if they want to come back in. We have a whole training one of my colleagues has put a training model together to be able to do that with volunteers, so it can be done safely, and they understand, as well as there's prompt cards and things like that within a play street, so that residents can come and go. We are very aware that if people have medical appointments or need to leave, or for whatever reason, it's not that they can't leave the street, it's that there's a process that they can do that in a safe way during a play street.
What typical things would they do in the play street? I mean, I was thinking, if you try to do kicking a ball around, it goes in somebody's garden that's just trying to enter some gardening competition and has the flowers damaged.
You mean Mrs. Simons, 1960?
What kind of activities would you anticipate that people would be able to play in the street? Because I would imagine that some, you wouldn't want the ball going in the garden, you want it going kick. Do you see what I'm saying? That I'm just curious.
Baseball with a very hard ball, John.
I've done that.
Yeah. I think, and this is the point, is that I think we've all been there, where you had to go around to the neighbour and either get your football back, apologise you've broken the greenhouse, like, and that is kind of
Been there.
been there as well. Like that was. I'm feeling old now. That was part of growing up, and for me, this is very much about it being a community-led initiative. Okay. So this is not I suppose back to the first thing. This is not the district council saying you've got to boot a football around at people's windows and do X, Y, and Z. It's community-led. If they want it to happen, brilliant, and the community will self-police to a large extent. They say, look, fine, but we don't want you playing baseball. They're not going to play baseball. It's going to be impact, light touch sort of stuff, but it's community led. Equally, if they do want to play cricket or rounders, great, crack on.
Oh, that's great.
Sorry, Taz, and Taz is going to give you the real answer now.
The fundamental equipment to give to these residents as well, so things like coordination, balance, getting them to do different things with equipment that isn't a ball, for example. We also will equip the lead resident with that, so that they can have some sort of equipment they can use, but we want to encourage them to use what they've got as well. So getting out on their bikes, being able to learn to ride their bike, going on their scooters in an environment where the cars aren't moving around.
Oh, that's great. That's a good answer for me. Thank you.
You're giving everyone a large university. There's been a riot. The health and safety gone mad. Di, please.
Thank you. Like everybody else, this is excellent work that's going on, and it's so important nowadays. Can I just ask a question on the Golden Lives? Are you eventually looking to go out into the more areas like the villages, because there's a lot of social isolation that goes on in the villages? So I hope that eventually, and I know this is in early days, but eventually that you will be able to embrace the villages as well, particularly with elderly people perhaps losing the opportunity to have a car. It is important that we look at that. So that's one question. And the other one is on the volunteer programme, which sounds excellent, because the volunteer programme and giving young people from 13 plus the opportunity to volunteer and to work alongside, and to perhaps motivate them a little bit more, some of them, and to then motivate their peers, is really important. So I can see that you've got 35 volunteers. What kind of ages are those volunteers? Are you getting a success with a whole range of age groups?
13 plus, Tom. I don't know.
So the volunteers are between 14 and 16 at the moment. The 18 plus model is a new element to the volunteer programme that we're launching this month, because we have a lot of adults that are asking us about putting back into the community, or coming to our walking football, for example, and wanting to referee because they've had a surgery and they're unable to now actually play walking football, but they enjoy coming for the social element. So hence why we've looked at expanding that offer to 18 plus as well. So at the moment it's 14 to 16, and they're going through qualifications and transferable skill leadership qualifications as well. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
And the Golden Lives?
Gordon lies in the rural areas. Yes, we would love to go out to those areas, and absolutely that would be an area we would look to go to. It's obviously funding dependent as well, so we would need to go out and find some funding to be able to do that, or if the residential home is able to put towards that activity and the instructors are available to do so, then yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Can
thank
I,
you.
can I ask what sort of funding would be needed for a group in the rural area to be golden?
It depends on the activity they want, and that's led by the residents that we talk to. So it can vary on an hourly rate. So I'd have to come back to you on it.
No, but I mean, what I'm thinking of is a community fund of £300 that each member has, so that would be able to fund something.
I'd be able to fund a couple of months, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Thank you. Right. Jamie, I think the last.
Yeah.
You say, thank you.
Brilliant work in relation to active Lichfield. Love to see people participating in any sort of sport at any occasion. Interesting to note the amount of money that we've given to a health centre that's not going to be built is 11 times greater than the yearly budget, and it would be possibly much better spent actually getting people outside doing activities, because it mentions at the end of your paragraph financial implications. In recent years, we've seen both the number and size of external funding opportunities reduce. So I'll throw that one in again. Strict parties and safer street. I mean, we've had one, a couple in our street. The application for shutting the road was very simple. It's a C road. You just shut the road. And if you're going to tell me you're going to provide some barriers and some activities for us, and you say improving kids' balance and get kids riding, but you should see the 80-year-olds. They need some help. I need some help with some more balance. So some of those games would be brilliant. I think they had a 93-year-old Morris dancing square dance caller at the last one that we had, and he was very good. He's still going. He's 94 now. In relation to it's just so important for mental health. Connected Lichfield Sports Club, if you need space, need to do stuff, please be in touch. Outdoor, we've only got 6 acres. We've got a croquet group that were there this afternoon. There's 10 of them. It's just a great way to get out and participate. And I would encourage anybody to go out and do something and to walk in a group. You're looking at other activities from the new swimming pool. Walking groups, get them to coordinate and meet there and do stuff there. Don't actually take any money off them, just get them to be there in the first place to go out, but they'll come back and use the cafe. It's just getting the involvement of people. So that's all I want to say, and make reference to 1.1 million again.
Yeah, can I just, on that point, and I think that point probably should be addressed. The last year when we went through SIL application, possibly the year before last, we put 1.2 million towards leisure activities throughout the district by creating a whole series of new activities that people could use right across the district. We were lambasted at the time for spending it on things like climbing walls and paddle courts and all sorts of leisure facilities, and were told that was the wrong thing to do. We should have given it to the NHS instead to fund health centres, etc. The next tranche of SIL money we have given fund a health centre and are now being lambasted for not spending it on leisure activities. So I think there's absolutely both are really, really important. It's difficult to get that balance right. Clearly, it's not ideal that this health centre is being delayed, and there is absolutely a question about that. But I do think it's really important that we invest in both preventative health, which is absolutely our role to do so, as well as the more formal types of health provision that we might see.
All right. Well, there's no recommendations we make because this is a briefing paper, mind you. But hopefully, I hope that the volunteers we have here have found it useful. The comments that have been made, a lot of praises for the work that's been going on, and any suggestions that may have been of interest to you. And thank you for answering the questions. Really, so good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We've got another one now, but thank you. Agenda item 7 then is the review of the overview and scrutiny function. Although he's talking about the past, it's lessons to be learned from this, and there are a lot of questions, and he'll draw attention to implicit in the report that hopefully you'll make your views known on. Just read the recommendation. In this case, it's not a briefing paper, so it is a recommendation to provide comments and feedback on, that's to me in particular, says to the council, all of us generally, on the operation of the overview and scrutiny structure and function for 2024-2025. So I'll go through section by section. So I've got a number of speakers already down here. Just put your hand up when you're ready to speak. Background there, first of all, and 3.1 there on the side of the council functions by one team of members with no risk of overlap of work as seen with the old structure. This folder actually is the strategic scrutiny committee report folder that I used to have. So we've only got one now, so that makes things a little easier. On this particular point, is that suitable?
Yeah, 3.11, if I can, Chair. Of course, there's no risk of overlap because there is just one committee. So it's self-evident there's not going to be overlap in the way that there was when there were 4 different committees. One thing I'm conscious of, though, is that, well, 2 things in a sense. One is the involvement of members. I mean, certainly under the old system with 4 committees, I think most members were on at least one scrutiny committee and could dig under the surface of particular areas of the council's work, which it's limited now. Whether we can consider increasing the number of members on the ONS committee, that might be for me to take forward a possible suggestion. But certainly during the year, we've had periods when we felt we were overloaded with things that we needed to look at. That isn't so much the case tonight with the agenda, but it has been previously where, we've had long agendas and items have been sort of deferred, delayed, pushed out of the work programme because of the pressures on the committees. Task groups have helped to manage those pressures, certainly, but that's my concern, if you like. It seems to be working well. I think there's a good sort of collegiate atmosphere to the way that we scrutinise, particularly pre-decision, pre-cabinet decision reports. But I just am concerned that perhaps not enough individual backbench members are engaged in the overview and scrutiny function, which is the responsibility of all members, not just the members of this committee.
I think it's evidenced by the fact that you have to send out quite a few emails to get volunteers for the task groups, the few task groups that we've had. And I keep making the point that every member, maybe the cabinet, have a chance to actually lobby the overview and scrutiny members, me or members generally, if they have issues, although they're not on the overview and scrutiny committee. I just have to keep re-emphasising that point. It is a scrutiny committee for the whole of the council, and to do that. But yeah, keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on the work that we're doing. But being able to concentrate on particular issues that are important. I think might be on the next paragraph or later on, where a lot of the reports in the past were just noted. They really were. I thought the briefing report would be noted, but anyway. So you never know. Will's going to defend it. He wrote it. What's wrong then? Yeah, I should have actually thought about it there. Well, sorry about that.
Quite all right, you were doing the job for me, so it's quite okay. So yes, just to quickly run members.
Still criticise it though, just because he's doing it.
Absolutely, yes. Please do feel free to provide any sort of feedback, positive or negative. So I think many of the members on the committee were also on the committee last year, so you'll have seen last year's version of this report, but just in case there are any changes that I'm not aware of. Previously on the council, the previous overview and scrutiny function was that we had 4 overarching ONS committees and a number of working groups that stemmed from those. In the 2019 to 2023 term of the council, we reformed the system so that there is now one overarching overview and scrutiny parent committee, and that committee can delegate work down task groups to perform specific research and scrutiny into a particular item, and then feed that back to the overall committee for information. In the first year that new system ran, in the last year that the previous system ran, there were 17 ONS committees altogether across those 4 separate committees and 13 working groups. That is a lot of pressure on members, on officers to do the research. overall a lot of work, the job at hand. The new system this year saw 6 ONS meetings and 7 task group meetings. Some members may want to see more scrutiny meetings. Some members may say, no, we need fewer scrutiny meetings that are more targeted. That is down to yourselves as a committee to decide what works best for you, absolutely. Only other things I quickly want to touch upon are the list of items that we've covered this year at ONS are listed at 3.2 in the report, and that is followed by a list of items that are already on the agenda for next year. That is something we've changed since last year. We did sort of hit a cliff edge last year where we got to the next year and it wasn't clear what items were going to be brought forward. We now have clear direction on what items are going to be looked at next year already. And in terms of member task groups, a few of those have been wound down this year. So pedestrianisation, the city centre master plan and the new leisure centre task groups, they have for the most part been parked, not officially disbanded. They are on the shelf, for want of a better word, in case there is a major issue and they suddenly need to be recalled at short notice. On the flip side, we also have a brand new task group this year, which is the local health matters task group, which had its first meeting last month, I believe, or was it the month before, earlier this year. That is a very quick overall summary of this year's work. And as I say, I'm happy to take any questions and any feedback, whether that is that you think the current system is working well, or whether you've got suggestions as to how it may function better.
Yes, I'll go through the paragraphs, actually, that's okay. It's not a long report, so go through the paragraphs. 3.13 about the robust selection of topics for ONS, a great number of topics aligned with strategic plans. That's what I want. On this one, Marv?
Yeah, it's on this.
Thank you.
This paragraph, thanks. Well, it's the kind of second paragraph under 3.13.
Yes.
It mentions there that we're having the opportunity for the public to suggest topics. I just wondered if any have been suggested yet.
So we have had a couple of suggestions through to that inbox. I've shared those with the chair and the vice chair. I'll say I've shared them technically. Georgia shared them with the chair and the vice chair. Those topics we deemed not necessarily to be appropriate for scrutiny to discuss. We had those conversations and it was felt that they would be better addressed either directly with officers or directly elsewhere. They weren't necessarily matters for ONS, but yes, there have been some suggestions to that. So members of the public do appear to be aware of it and are making use of the function, which is good to see.
Good.
Yeah, I mean that was the experience of another local authority I was looking at their system and so on. So this is just perhaps a casework issue that local members or some of us can deal with. I'm certainly hoping that we'll get something interesting there that will open up a wider topic to be discussed at. But hopefully we're given the feedback. I must follow that up actually. But I did ask for feedback back to the people who contacted us, and
I think it's a very good idea. I hope we get some more good suggestions in. I went on the website yesterday and I did notice there's no link to it from the ONS page. So just
but glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Is that on purpose? That's not on purpose, is it?
Yeah.
I think
no, I couldn't find it the other day. I remember which way to go. Yeah.
You can get to it from the main council screen.
Yeah.
It's one of the main things. So most people probably would go that way. But if you actually go to ONS's page, there's no link to submit.
Okay. The ONS page is into technical details about how the website works. One half of the website is sort of managed by digital. The other half derives itself directly from ModGov, which obviously is how you get all of your agendas. So I will have a look in ModGov to see if there is somewhere in there that we could somehow put a link so that it would feed directly onto that ONS page. If not, I'm happy to go away and talk to the digital team about that and see if there is a way that we can absolutely get that link on there, because you're quite right, it makes sense for it to be on the ONS page.
Yeah.
Suggest things to ONS.
Some people may well go through the tree of committees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the website has been greatly. I thought it was a good website. It's been greatly improved, but there are these little bits where, as I say, I couldn't find out where it was. I thought, what's it like to go back and forth, and you couldn't. So yeah, I mean, we could try and make it easier for people. That would be good. Yeah, I'm glad that's been looked at. 3.1 brackets 4 chair and vice chair. Well, it's up to you lot to decide whether that's the case or not. 3.15 better questioning by members, less speech making. Is this a speech or question?
I'm afraid it's both, Chair. I have a question. And a little preamble before that, please.
That's okay. Yeah.
I think, as Councillor Woodward just said, I think the collegiate working has improved. Previously, in the overall scrutiny committees that I've been involved with, it was generally the opposition members who asked questions, but we're increasingly getting the controlling group members asking questions as well and playing a full part, which is encouraging. But there are still some people who don't say anything, and you do wonder why they're here. And I just wonder, Chair, how can we encourage those people who are not participating to participate more? Or if they're not really into this, maybe can they be replaced by someone who would participate more?
Yeah, I understand that one. That's why I have pre-meetings. I've always done that in my life, really, is in scrutiny, is to encourage people who maybe are looking to ask a question or don't know where to ask the question. There's usually I can find a place, because it's my job as chair to make sure I read everything pretty well, even if I don't understand it. So at least I can help members find a place to ask those questions. And I don't think we're doing that, but we can do that all the time. Plus the training that we've had. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to ask questions, I think it's up to others to suggest they might be better on another committee or something like this.
But I mean, I'm putting that into the public domain,
Yeah,
so that someone may pick up on that and do something about it.
And did you have anything else on that, or was that it for on this particular point?
On that particular one, that's all.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Sorry on that. No. Right, 3.16 track timelines for induction of final approval. Greater gaps will show earlier. ONS involvement. Yeah, it's all right. And I'm aware that we do get a lot of pre-decision scrutiny, which is, in one sense, it looks like we're not doing our job in one sense, because we're not getting to change their minds, but we've influenced the decision at the cabinet, hopefully, in a number of cases. And so we've done our job. So, and it's less confrontational. It makes more sense to me. So I do appreciate that we do get that opportunity at Lichfield District. Now, Colin, please.
Chair, as you know, in the previous pre-meeting before this, I raised a couple of points which you will be taking up. But I mean, my concern is, how do we make sure that the cabinet and the staff team at the council actually act on our decisions or our suggestions? And there's a few things that we were supposed to this evening, for instance, get an update on the trial of the new aspects of the new planning process. That's not appeared. There was an item in the last minutes about possible changes to the structure of the local trading company that we have, and increasing member involvement in that. Not aware of any progress on that at all. In the past, we've had pedestrianisation raised here. It came very late to this committee. No real change was implemented after all the suggestions we made. So I'm just concerned, if we are to be effective, how do we ensure that the suggestions we make are actually taken note of, or we get a report back that they're going to be rejected? Because at the moment it just seems to disappear into the long grass, and unless we keep chipping away at it meeting after meeting, which becomes tedious and boring, it's usually me doing it, it becomes embarrassing. So, you know, how do we resolve that, please?
And then the other thing, by the way, is used elsewhere, where we have on the work programme, we have a list of things that are due to be coming to this committee, so that at least those are tasked to actually respond to those points that are made by the scrutiny committee, particularly recommendations, know that we'll be able to raise it at the next meeting. It's in the minutes. We don't have matters arising, but it's in the minutes planning, and so we can have that. That would be my advice, that we have that on the work programme alongside it in some way to update. So there may be reasons why things can't be updated, but if we don't get any feedback at all, it just makes you think, as you know, a bit frustrated and so on. Jamie first, and so it for me.
But just in relation to that, is it worth having action points? So at the end of the minutes, there's a list of actions. If there's 3 actions, then those 3.
It'd be a bit revolutionary for district council.
Well,
if we haven't done the work programme, we're talking about the same thing, I think, really.
Yeah.
there, an update, so.
Yeah, work programme's there, but he puts a timescale on it, and then it's whether it's
No,
actionable or
but
not.
that's what I'm talking of. Maybe I'm not using the same term, but I'm talking about that. I think we're talking about the same thing, really.
Okay.
We can call it the Jamie work programme if you.
I don't like things like that.
Check it though. So.
Yeah, to be fair,
So,
some, if not
compared to who?
most, of the cabinet reports will refer to ONS. So if something's come, I'm thinking about the MTFS discussions that we had at ONS, which are then referred to in the cabinet reports presented to cabinet and then to council. So you can see there that scrutiny views are being considered or acknowledged or implemented. But I understand absolutely that there isn't a direct connection. So, I'm sure we can all think of one or two examples at least where we've spent time feeding in suggestions to a cabinet member, and it feels ultimately when a report comes out that nothing has changed, nothing has been acknowledged or recognised or considered. And it would be helpful then to have some feedback from that particular cabinet member as to why, we spent time conscientiously giving you our views and looking at what you were proposing. Can you tell us why you didn't implement A, B and C? So I think there's a responsibility for cabinet members as well to make sure they do report back after they've been in front of the ONS committee.
I think on this work action list, talk about there could be space there if it's up to cabinet members and so on. But if we can get a response there saying, yeah, we heard your arguments. They say this to the cabinet. Heard your arguments. They're very good arguments, but we don't agree. That's okay. But it's the acknowledging that they have been considered. I think that's the thing that's missing. I gave an example earlier about at the pre-meeting with regard to passing your driving test. If you could think back that far, it wasn't enough to say to the examiner, I've been looking in the mirror all the time. I can tell you what's been happening the last 10 minutes. That's not good. You've got to let him see you looking at the mirror. So there's got to be evidence that you've actually considered it, or at least attempt to give us evidence that you've considered it. So I've asked members as well for any examples of that. I will follow them through. But if we can have that on there, that would be helpful. I think that's what members are wanting to see, that we've done all this work. You have looked at it, haven't you? It wasn't just talking shop. I don't know whether you wanted to speak on that at all, Will.
Not much matter other than absolutely we can consider some of those suggestions, look at how that works best. I know there have been some meetings this year, I think early this year, where cabinet invited yourself, chair.
Yes, yeah. Well, you don't want to do that every time, though. We don't want every time.
Saying that in terms of that,
I'm right to you.
That engagement between ONS and cabinet, there's many methods that we can explore about how that might function and work.
Okay, thank you. Well, up to members here to chase me up as chair to make sure these things are happening. So yeah, thank you. Item 3.2 then is the items that are covered by this. Oh, sorry, Leanne. Yeah, sorry, sorry, yes.
Did we have youth council? It wasn't in December, which was.
Oh, no, I've got that on the work programme. I put it on there really time because there was a delay to the youth council, so it should be on the next meeting.
Or 3.2, did we not cover that as a verbal update?
Well, we didn't really cover it because it was delayed the report. Well, you know, Will, don't you? So.
Yeah, no, I think you're referring to 3.2 in terms of items that we've previously discussed, aren't you, Councillor Young? Yeah, I think we did have a verbal update on youth council meeting. Yes, so yeah, if that is missing, that should be included in there. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was only a verbal one. Sure.
Yeah, it was a verbal.
Just pencil it in there. Pencil it in. Right. Look forward to the next meeting.
Another question you raised earlier that this thing of reporting back, and the comment was made, couldn't we have some kind of action list or something else? And it was kind of just sort of moved on. Why?
No. What I've said is that we can have that on the work programme. There will be an action stroke work programme list, so that we'll have reporting back to keep an eye on it. So I'm just saying to Jim, I was probably using a different term for the same thing, so that we'd have that on there.
Because that way, at least we'd know what was happening. And the people are reporting back, and that everybody has the opportunity to be able to see it. Rather than it going to one person, everybody else is in the dark. I think it's important that we all have the opportunity to see, whether that's on the website or whatever else it is. I don't know, you know.
On the work programme is what I've said. That's what we'll have. On 2025-26 items, I've got Youth Council there. So that is the report at the next meeting that we're promised. Call in reference there. I think that's where there was some frustration in the previous call in with regard to lack of response. Yeah, okay, well, we're moving on. Member task groups 3.4 on pedestrianisation. The pedestrian task group was a very narrow remit because it was followed on from being lobbied by people with blue badges or the carers of people with blue badges, and we interviewed the witnesses very early on. I've also been lobbied now by the taxi drivers, and also one of the witnesses has sent a load of questions to the chief officer involved in this. I'll be looking forward to see what happens from that. But for the blue badge aspect of it, that task group had finished, but had a very narrow remit. Okay, Paul, I wanted to speak on this.
Yeah, just on the task groups, as you said early on, a number of these task groups have some have served their purpose, some are in abeyance, and therefore there seems to be some capacity with members and officers. And there's one task group which we spoke about, and that was really interested at the beginning of this council, which will, and now in the MTF is put in a budget of £450,000 over the next period, which was transport. And it just seems that that's something that we should seriously consider, so that we can collect data, we can look at the priorities about lobbying, if it might be lobbying, or about where we can spend some of that money, whether it's subsidising some commercial operators, whether it's community taxes, which I think has been talked about before. So that's something I think as a group we should seriously consider. I know there's enthusiasm around this table to have that group.
Yeah, we need to look at the process we have in our toolkit for looking at that. I think there is an opportunity now that the county was looking at public transport, and they did some work on that, but they certainly had no money, because I was talking about inviting an officer along to speak to us about what was being. Things have moved on, I think, and there's opportunities now because of the change in local government reorganisation or the potential change. We might as well get on with it, because this gives us opportunity to lobby for whatever comes next. I think lobby government, lobby our MPs about what we think we ought to have based on the evidence that the task group comes up with. Obviously, you get it regularly in Burnt, but with the cinema opening in Lichfield, how do you get back, or you can get there really?
And with that budget, that lobbying could be more effective, because we could be able to say we might be able to contribute some of the cost of it. So
to provide the evidence to say that this is the evidence, this is the evidence that will show that it would be worth doing A, B, or C, or if you do this, this is not happening. I think that's worth it. But we've got to go through the toolkit, and
if I can just comment on that. My advice on that would be, we obviously had a terms of reference submitted for a public transport task group a while ago that we reviewed. I think the original terms of reference was quite broad. But my advice would be that we probably just need to revisit that in terms of scope, because obviously you take public transport, that's obviously buses, but is it taxis, which would then stray into the world of regs and licensing potentially? Does public transport include aircraft? Obviously no planes in Lichfield, but you get my point in that we need to be targeted with what the task group is actually looking at. You know, we're not looking at aircraft, obviously. It's going to be buses, it's going to be potential trains. Just having that clarity in that terms of reference allows the task group to then conduct the task that is focused on, and then finish with an actual outcome that we can then present on to where it may be, big council or whoever.
We can get on with that now. I'm going to wait for the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I think
there's some email. Get some agreement.
And I think I know, Sue, you had a look at that. I could have a look at that again. And
yeah. So
yeah, to support absolutely what Paul has said, and I think we can get on with it relatively quickly now, and we can refine what the remit is. I think sort of perhaps in our own minds we all know it's about very localised transport, and we've talked earlier on about hospitals and health and so on. If you can't get out and about, then if there's no public transport, then you know a lot of the work that's being done on loneliness, social isolation is all for nothing. But, you know, it is that much more localised transport that we need. We need to make sure that not only the transport is being connected, but our policies as a council are being connected. You referred to the developments in Lichfield city centre, but if you live in the rural villages, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that, and yet your council tax is contributing to it. So I think these are really important connectors to the wider sort of strategic plan, really. So the sooner the better. And what I'd say for our first meeting is that we look at the county council's bus service improvement plan. If you haven't seen the VSIP, as it's called, just have a look at it, because their description, for example, of Burntwood, my town, which I know best, doesn't bear any relation to my understanding of the way public transport works in Burntwood. So, you know, I think scrutinising that particular bus service improvement plan might be a useful first step, so that we're feeding back to the county council exactly what we think about it.
Well, that's the problem I had, you see, that the county council was doing, scrutinising the transport plan. And it's getting awkward now with the elections coming up on the 1st of May, so I don't want to get too much involved in that. But I did send out that information, I think, to all members of the scrutiny committee at the time, and I was looking into this. But we'll make sure we do all that and then come to an agreement about what the terms of reference are, where we want to end up, as Will said.
Just to emphasise again, Chair, I think in terms of that terms of reference, articulating what it is the task group hopes to achieve is crucial as well. You know, the finish part of task and finish, because for it to be an effective task and finish group, it needs to have an outcome that benefits residents, and that the committee would like to see. So identifying what it is you're hoping to get out of this task group, what the end result is, I think that is key for revisiting that terms of reference.
Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. Go on this, Colin, is it specifically?
Yeah. No, it's moving on to something else.
Oh. No. Lichfield City Centre Master Plan. Any questions?
I can use that opportunity. I simply, as this is the last committee in the cycle, I'd like to record my thanks to Will and his team for all the support they give me with the.
Yeah, some have gone native though. Some have gone over to the other side.
City Centre Master Plan group, and I think on behalf of the whole committee, I suggest we do thank Will for his work with us here, which he's demonstrated very clearly.
I try not to encourage him.
And throughout the
Keep on his toes, really.
Suggestions and proposals he's made. So thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. Then do we say thank you to Will?
Yeah.
It is appreciated. The county used to have 3 or 4. We've only got Will here, so he's doing very well. Right, the city centre master plan, that's just information there, unless anyone says we've got that. The new leisure centre, which Councillor Young Learner did this, that's closed, and it's a point in the future, maybe looking again. And the local health matters, which is mostly a reaction to particular issues that we can have an input on, a worthwhile input as a district council, on top of what the county might be dealing with. Any? No? I think that's said. There was anything else that was on there, but we've had feedback, as I asked for at the beginning, the comments and feedback on the operation of the scrutiny instruction. I've certainly got things to follow up on that, and hopefully will remind me if I missed something out there. Okay, so I look forward to that new action / work programme list later on.
Yeah, I was just going to make one general point which we spoke about earlier, as we move forward in the following year, is something where we can make our operation even more effective, is by inviting some people in. So say we have our task group about, I suppose I'm talking about task group here, but the points made that and it's targeted and it's scoped and the specific objective, and it might be around buses, and there might be around subsidising commercial operator. Get a commercial operator and ask them what are their challenges and hear it from them. So I think that might be a role for doing
that. That will be the job. You know, the witnesses are so important to do that, and it may be because they're small task groups. You have them online if they.
Well, it might be
for Jay, but yeah, that's what you need to do. I mean, it's up to the task group once one is set up how they go about it. But you'll get help from Will and advice.
But
on
I
that.
think it's generally something we should look at with the,
Yeah.
we've talked before about the youth council, maybe get youth councillors in, maybe something around health.
Yeah,
We've spoken a lot about,
Absolutely, it is a task group, but yeah.
not just create a talking shop for the sake of it, but if there is a
No, no.
specific message we want to put
I
across,
recommend
specific
it all,
feedback
yeah.
we want to get the people in the room.
It's important to have witnesses to give the evidence, as we had with the pedestrianisation task group. When you get, find out what it is like, you think, oh,
Yes.
I never realised that, and so that's what it's about. So yeah, and that's what can make scrutiny exciting in my view and worthwhile. And you do get evidence at the end of the day. So well, you say that, but this is the witness actually is affected by this. So
Yeah.
there you are. Well, good. That's good then. I'm going to let everybody volunteer for this task group. The next one, I think, just for noting, isn't it? The LWMTS business plan, draft mates. I'll wait for somebody to come forward, maybe the chief executive, managing director / Oh, sorry, Paul's already gone.
Let the end as if I don't like it.
I have the report here and the executive summary and recommendations, and I'll ask Simon obviously to, or Leah, or anyway, between you.
I can give a high level, let the officers do the detail. This is the business plan for the. I've totally lost my notes. I'll have to give up on that side. The business plan for LWMTS, obviously, it comes from ONS review. The sort of the structure of how the organisation is set up in terms of governance. Obviously, it goes to audit as well. Full council determines the direction of this through the business plan and through its shareholder representative. We have one on the board of the 4 directors in total. And as a sort of a high level overview, LWMTS, since it was repurposed, shall we say, as part of the English Council, has taken a large role in services for the council. So it's now turning over just over £5 million a year. That's quite an exponential. It's had some real successes. So Disabled Facilities Grant, I think, is the absolute standout success of LWM in its ability to, always used to see capital slippage every single year, huge number, and always DFGs. We hadn't got through the numbers of disabled facilities grants that we needed to, and because we're relying on external partners, we brought that into in-house through LWM. And I think last year we overspent and had to rejiggle some numbers to do it. But what that represents for me is individuals in our district who have had their lives improved, have been able to stay out of care homes or hospital for longer because of the improvements that have been made, and in general improved their lives. It obviously looks after our leisure centres as well, and we had Taz and Sarah earlier on, and is delivering a lot of our leisure centre activities as well. And we've put communications in there. Amongst a whole range of other items that our chief executive was putting in front of me now. But really, it was really just about highlighting, I suppose, the successes that we see as councillors. There's a whole load of back office sort of type operations as well that have gone in there, like talent acquisition, etc., where we're now able to offer our services to other councils. And I suppose the whole purpose of this is not only delivering an efficient council to help us find those savings, but also improving services that our residents expect from us, and I think it's doing that in spades. Obviously, the council, and I mean that in its truest sense of the word, full council always needs to determine the direction of that business to make sure that we're happy with the direction it's taking, and ensuring that we've got good governance in place. But the business plan that's in front of you tonight is for your review and commentary to feed back to the shareholder rep that we have on LWM.
Do you mind if I ask you though to a little bit more about the political control of the body, really? I think it's what members would be concerned about. This is a great organised, great system here, all this money and all the rest of it, but where do we influence it, and where the control is? Can you say a little bit more about that? Full council isn't really, it's just, the decision-making body, but it's not one where you go discussion and questions and answers, that sort of thing. So if you say a little bit more about that before you get into it, that would be helpful, I think, for members here.
So the business plan is absolutely a full council decision, and that is where it gets signed off for the shareholders to go and act on behalf of the sole shareholder, which is Lichfield District Council. So in terms of, we say political control of the of LWM sits squarely with full council, that is vested through a shareholder representative on the board of the company, but clearly there's 4 directors of that board. The shareholder rep does not have any ability or powers to control that organisation themselves. Those decisions are made by the board. And that is, so governance is obviously something that audit is looking at. And I know speaking to the auditors to ensure that good governance is in place. The paper in front of you this evening is about the business plan itself and the content of that rather than the governance arrangements themselves.
Thank you. Yeah, Chief Executive's going to wait.
Yeah, someone said.
That's all right.
I think you've hit
Sorry,
the,
sorry. Councillor Stratton, did you want to comment at all at this point?
Only very briefly, and again, speaking very much to the business plan, which is the document before you this evening, as opposed to wider conversations about governance, which I think realistically are taking place in another place via audit and with the auditors, is that we've seen that there's been quite a lot put into Lichfield West Midlands Traded Services over the last 2 years, and this business plan is moving very much to a stability. We're not looking as a council to transfer too much more into the company. It's clearly demonstrating that it's succeeding with what it's got, in some cases quite spectacularly. And so this is now moving to a mode of comfortable delivery while we effectively can take stock and find out what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 years, or frankly, as long as we continue to exist. And so this is, for me, this is a robust and well thought through business plan. I think it's certainly very deliverable for the company. It delivers on all of the priorities that this council has set for the company. And I think this is very much now about building and developing that track record and working forwards. That was all I really wanted to add.
Yeah. Well, the recommendation is that the committee reviews the LWMTS business plan 2025-26 and provides feedback to the shareholder representative. So that's it. But so I'll bring in you out. So yeah, then I'll go through it page by
I think
page.
you've hit exactly where members have some disquiet about the relationship between the council and the LWMTS. We've had these discussions before about having some balance in terms of board membership, and forgive me for raising the issues of governance, but I think it is pertinent. Paragraph 6.7, for example, refers to the appointment of a 4th director. We said before there should be, particularly in the Home Council, and the company serves the council, there should be possibly a 2nd director from a different political group than the controlling group. I believe that Councillor Andy Smith is also now very directly involved as the shareholder representative. Is that right? Yep. And so there's no transparency from my perspective as the principal opposition leader into the working of the board. So we don't see board papers, for example, and there's no visibility of board papers from anyone outside the controlling group. We can all go on trust and say this is working really well, and we've seen the evidence of things working well, but there needs to be some transparency of the operations of the board to allay any concerns that the whole council might have. And you're right, full council is not the place where you discuss details of a business plan. I think things have moved on since we called in the decision to have a single director and chairman in Councillor Alex Farrell, and there is discussion at the audit committee about some sort of stakeholder group, which I'm more inclined to support. The discussion went on last week, and I'm more inclined to go along that model. But I do wonder whether if there is a shareholder committee board, we either have at least 2 councillors or none. The point was made at audit last week that perhaps there should be no political representation on the traded company board. So, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable argument. I think my concern is there isn't that sort of balanced overview at present. I'm not seeing any aspersions. I'm not raising any suspicions. I'm just saying that's how it feels, if you like, as a non controlling group member or as a non-cabinet member, a backbench member. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Otherwise, there are very few questions I want to ask because it looks as though, things are being scoped. There's reference to opportunities. There's reference to some challenges in some business areas which the traded company can pick up and possibly develop further. But that has always been, in a sense, the question mark in my head.
Do you want to address that? I mean,
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So,
I know we're looking at the business plan, but I can have another meeting and do it.
It's in there. It's 6.7.
I know there's a connection, so if we could,
yeah,
if that's helpful, please, Simon.
so the directors of the company have had a conversation about this. Clearly, we've heard that the conversation and some concern expressed in different parts of the council about the role of some of the opposition parties in the oversight, whatever, of the company. So we're going to take some legal advice in the company as well. There is something called your individual fiduciary duty as a director of a company, and LWM is no different to any other company as well. And that is a personal responsibility that you hold to put the company's interests above your own personal interests or any other group's interests. So we have asked, we're reaching out to a lawyer to ask whether or not actually a political balance on the board of the company. I know, so you were talking about maybe a shareholder balance instead, but genuinely, I am incredibly concerned about a political balance on a company because you can't vote on block. You have to vote because your personal fiduciary duty doesn't allow you to do that as a director of a company. So we could look at that. And then from my perspective, the council does have oversight of this company. The council wholly owns the company. The company was created to create, for me, I believe, flexibility, agility to do things that in the council it would be more difficult to achieve as well. But the oversight is there every year because the business plan is signed off by the representative, the board representative, sorry, the shareholder representative. And at the end of the financial year, as with the one that's just closed, there will be a report on progress against the business plan. So tonight you're looking at the new business plan, but we are now currently providing or preparing a close down to the one that just ended at 24-25 as well. There is ample opportunity for you to scrutinise, to challenge, to adjust what you want the company to do, I would say. But like I would just share a concern about political balance in an organisation is meant to be arm's length from the council by design.
Yeah, and if I can just come back, that's why I said I've shifted my position in the sense that it's probably better to have no political representation on the board, that it is wholly arm's length rather than a bit arm's length. And these are concerns I've had for a long time, as the leader knows. I would just wonder if they're shared by the members, Chair.
Well, before, I just want to draw attention to the legal implications. I've got it somewhere on page 37, the introduction to the report, which is directors are required to act in the best interest of the company, and there is potential for conflicts of interest with their council roles. These should be managed as outlined in the report, including separation between directorship and shareholder roles. So the audit is looking at this. I just want to draw attention to that aspect of it. Paul, and then I'd like to go through the business case if we can.
Yeah, just say, I do share the concerns that Councillor Woodward's raised there. I guess, and I take the point, but I guess if you had another councillor on the board, they are a director. They have to act with those duties you do. So if they go impartial and they go partial and they go political, they're breaching their director's duties. So they would need to be very careful, or the shareholder board model where it might be the alternative. Because it seems to me there's two main advantages of the company. And firstly, when you read it, there's good work being done here. So I don't want to come at it purely from a negative point of view, but I do have to have this caution. It seems to me there's two main areas of advantage. One is employment terms. You can offer more competitive employment terms to attract people to the training company than within the council structure. And the other one is decision making. you aren't constrained by the processes, the procedures in the councils, like decisions having to go through cabinet and when they're over a certain threshold. That doesn't apply. So I get that, albeit that does raise, it makes it feels a little bit uncomfortable. There would be some decisions made by that company, if they were being made in the council, they would be going through cabinet. And we would have full visibility on it. The public would have full visibility on it. So I think something needs to be done here because, as Sue says, there's no aspersions being cast, but it's just transparency, and it's just a bit of a check and balance, just in case some wrong decisions or where there was some overstretch or whatever in the future. So that's where I'm coming. I think there's good work being done here. You can see that's very visible from reading the plan. One of the concerns I've expressed before is overstretch, and Rob Strachan said that there's no plan to put a whole lot more services into the trading company, but I think we do have to think about that transparency point.
I'm not sure where the transparency would come in with that suggestion. That's all. But I may want to.
If I can, I'm hopefully helping.
Yeah.
So the company can only deliver against its business plan. They cannot deliver the business plan unless it's agreed by the council and the council shareholder. We don't divert, we don't pivot and say, actually, let's have a crack at something else midway through the year. Our job, today, at the beginning of 25-26, is to deliver this business plan. If we want to change that, or we don't think we can change it, we have to come back to the shareholder and say, actually, we don't think we can do what we've agreed to do or what you've asked us to do. So if there are concerns that the company, is going off and doing things that the council wouldn't be happy with or content with, I'd like to try to rest or reassure you that we cannot do that, because our constitution does not allow us to do that. We are employed, we are here to deliver the business plan for the benefit of the council on an annual basis.
I think you're saying that concentrating on the business plan is our opportunity now, because if there's anything we don't agree with this, you've got to say it now. And if there's something that happens that isn't in the business plan, then that's going to be brought out at a later stage.
Oh, Chair, I mean, it's no surprise that I've got concerns too, because I've raised them publicly before. And I think, I have a lot of sympathy with what the Chief Executive said. I understand that. But I think it's always the case, if you can't see what's going on, you always worry that something is going on that you're worried about, that you might be concerned about. And I can't see what the problem would be of having one other person there as a councillor on that board, just to be visible, to act as a director of the company, not as a councillor, so that then that person could report back, because no doubt the current member of the board reports back to his group about what's going right and what's going wrong, but others who are not in that group have no knowledge of that. So if there's a way of sharing the outcomes of those meetings, perhaps I think there has to be some mechanism to make sure that, as I say, if you're outside a group, you always worry that something going on inside that you won't be happy with.
Check. Can I try?
I'm going to certainly bring you in some. I've got the board leadership here. You've got the titles, never mind the names, but there's the company secretary presumably has a particular role here on behalf of the council, if you like, the sheriff. But if you could help me with the board and who has responsibility in making sure that the company is acting as it should.
Yeah, so every meeting of the board, Chair, is minuted, and it's minuted by the company secretary. Company secretary is now an employee of the council. Previously it was a bought-in support position as well. I am more than happy, Chair, if members would like us to share the minutes of the board meetings as and when the board meetings appear. Again, you will not be surprised to see that the board meetings are focused on delivering the business plan. But if that would help, I'm more than happy to open those up. Then the company is your organisation, so if you want to see more of the documentation, I'm more than happy to provide.
They presumably be confidential minutes.
Elements of it may well be confidential and or commercial, but as long as we recognise that and we protect those minutes, then why would we not be willing to share them?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strachan, please, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I only wanted to come in very, very briefly on that, because like Sue, I was in that informal conversation with the Council's external auditors last week. We did discuss the Companies Act duties on directors and how effectively each director on that board owes a primary duty to the company and not to the council. I felt, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, that the council's auditors were also quite anxious to avoid seeking a political balance within the board of the company, because they felt that that politicised the company, and that's not what it's there to do. They in fact commented that if that board was to expand, and they felt it was still a little bit small, that should be in the form of non-executive directorships, and that it's time to build expertise rather than politicians. And effectively that is it. I see Councillor Farrell's presence on that board as being an executive representation. So he represents the executive of this council, and it vests in that position as the portfolio holder. And is effectively comparable to a representation on outside bodies. For example, Councillor Pullen on the leaders board, it vests in him as the leader of the authority, that vests in Alex as the relevant portfolio holder. And the council is nothing more than the operational arm of a political body, which is the council. We have the ability to guide the direction of that company and its activity by setting policy and by making decisions within this forum and in that room over there, by the activities of this council. We fully own that company. We fully control that company. And its decision-making process, actually, I think it was Councillor Ray who asked for it, the Articles of Association and the shareholder agreement, which have been provided to you as supplementary documents. That actually from page 43 onwards on the supplementary documents take you through those points of consultation on specific decisions and where this has to come back to council. And so to echo Simon's point, this is the point where we're agreeing the business plan, but there are all of those other things the company might do that also have touch points within this council that have to come to certain places, whether it's by me as the cabinet member for finance, whether it's Doug as the leader, whether it's the cabinet, whether it's this body, or even full council. There are so many other ways that this council can guide the policy of that company, rather than by seeking balance on the board. And I just really urge caution on that.
I will take people back in, but Sue, Paul and Jamie.
I mean, just to echo what Councillor Strachan just said, there was that useful discussion which included explaining to me what a TECL agreement is. And it's interesting to see that word written down, because I did say to them, what's a TECL agreement and how do you spell it, so they can Google it. I've certainly shifted my view, and as I've said, and I'll say again, you know, either no politicians on that board or at least 2 politicians in that board. It seems to me to be the transparent way of doing things. But the chief executive's made the offer of allowing members to see minutes of the board, and I think that would be really healthy and helpful. I don't know why we haven't asked for that before, actually. But you know, it might be that they just come to the members O&S committee, but perhaps, you know, more widely to all members of the council, particularly when we've got some LWMTS decision making to do at council. You know,
audit as well as so.
Yeah.
Paul, I think, and then it was Jamie. Yeah, please.
Yeah, you know, my view is I think there should still be some balance, and I wouldn't get sort of the fact is there is a political slant on the council, on the board at the moment, because they're Conservatives, but you are there as directors of the company. So I think give credit to the fact that if there were other councillors from another party on that board, they will be there as directors, but it's just another pair of eyes. And the other point, which I made before, it just feels a little bit uncomfortable. There will be decisions made. Appreciates is caught within the overall business plan, but that is very high level. But there'll be decisions made about when levels of expenditure on IT, on renting premises, or whatever it might be, which ordinarily, if it was in the council, would go through the process, but they don't go through the process. And I understand it's one of the benefits of this company, but it does lead me towards like just needing that additional level of scrutiny oversight.
Yes, sorry. Well, that's Jamie. I'll bring Jamie in, Chief Executive now.
Yeah, just a couple of points. One is, I've heard all the arguments for board members for this, that or the other. You say you've sought legal advice. That'll be the determining factor anyway. Do you have a timescale for when? Do you have a timescale for when that advice is likely to be given?
Thank you, Chair. So I've asked for that advice earlier this week, and I've asked for that to be provided as quickly as possible. So a couple of weeks maximum.
That gets through the discussion. And the other points I wanted to mention, in surprisingly enough, it's under leisure. Under 8.4, it makes reference to the fact that Friary Grange and Burntwood leisure centres offer similar provision, with both having swimming pools, squash courts, sports halls, and all-weather pitches. Where is the Friary Grange sports hall and all-weather pitch? Have we acquired one? Because you don't have control of one.
That's a very precise point. I didn't write that paragraph. I need to go.
I mean, if we got one, great.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Jamie. So, Chair, just on the final point, though, if I may go back, so I will share the legal advice that we receive as well. There are also good case studies of where a politically balanced board on a company that is owned by a council have gone horribly wrong. You know, there's a relatively famous energy company not a billion miles away from us, went horribly wrong because, and one of the reasons for that was because, although to your point, Councillor Reyes, well, yes, of course, as directors, we have that individual responsibility, not a party responsibility. It crept in to that organisation and it caused some problems. So if ONS would like to look into this in more detail, I'd like to be able to provide more of that data and more of those case studies, so you can make an informed sort of decision.
And with the legal advice, is that because the other option is shareholder board rather than on the board? Is that just the legal advice? Will it cover that as well as an option? Because I think that would be helpful.
Certainly ask it too.
Maybe want to come out.
Sorry, just a last point. With the move towards unitary areas and various district councils dispute, how many of the other district councils have, let me get these letters, LWMTS things? And are we in a position to set up for all of the ones that might come together, or would they merge together, or is this the end of the LWMTS?
Yeah, so Chair, I would say, without wishing to be overly pedantic, both district councils and county councils will disappear as a consequence of local government reorganisation. There's a new tier of local government. I think there's a stat like something like 80% of local authorities, regardless of their tier, own a company of some. Many councils own many companies. My view is that actually the way that we are modelled, that we are structured, is something that if we have an opportunity to have our say in terms of what local government reorganisation looks like for our residents, I'd like to see more of an LWM type activity. So I think other parts of the county will learn from what we're doing if they have the opportunity to do so.
Really hoping that the reorganisation does an opportunity to see what works the best, whatever authority has been doing in the past, and learn from that.
Yeah, so trying to move us on now.
Yeah, I've moved on. I've just got another point. Yeah.
I think the company's been a great success. I mean, echoing what they've said, I'd like to see it grow and do more. I'd like to see it as a model of what happens in the future. And as many of you know, I'm really pleased that it's going to be branching into housing, and particularly housing for rent, which is a mine. I'm trying to get that done for a few years. Glad it's happening. But in terms of growing the company, if we don't put any more LDC business into the company, then it stops growing. So we have to generate more external business so that we can then put in more LDC business into the company, so that we keep that 80-20 balance going forward. So I'd like to hear something about the current business plan, or future business plans, assuming that the company continues for at least 2 or 3 years until this reorganisation takes place. How do we grow the company over that period by ensuring that we keep the 80-20 balance, but enabling us to put more LDC stuff into the company by growing the external business that we're doing? I'd like to explore that before.
Jack, should I try to come back on that? So, I mean, we could put 100% of the council activity into the company if we'd like to. There's nothing to stop doing that. There are other authorities have outsourced 100% of their activity as well. So it's a similar principle, isn't it, to that? What Councillor Strachan talked about in terms of not growing this year is absolutely correct. It means that we're not anticipating, and the business plan doesn't anticipate any more of the council services coming into the company, but it does anticipate the company growing. So we have a particular focus this year on our ecology brokerage, which we're already making some progress on, our planning consultancy and our talent acquisition. In March this year, we attended the District Council's Networks annual conference, and we had a stall there to talk about us as a model and what we're doing and those particular service areas as well. So we anticipate much more of our income coming from outside of the council. And then the other point I make on TECL is a structure, and it's about procurement and a route to the council having its services provided to it. TECL is not a barrier. If we want to, we can change the structure of the company if it grows to a point where actually more than 20% of our income is being generated outside LDC. I wouldn't see TECL as a worry or a concern, as long as we keep our eye on it. And it would mean that we would have to adjust the way that we do business with the council potentially. But again, that is not a bad thing if we're generating more revenue.
The auditors are keeping an eye on that too.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that. I keep an eye on it. That's the job for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Miles, please.
I had a query about TECL. It comes late in the business plan. There's a section of weaknesses. And
Well, I'm going to go through the business plan now, although people.
pick it up later if you'd rather, Chair.
If that's okay, yeah. Is that okay? Because having been told that this is so important, we ought to go through it, right? And not concentrate on just to do that. Don't let's lose sight of that, please. So, if I may, then I'll go through the page by page. I'll shout out if you have any questions and you've made a note somewhere to ask that question. So, page 40, page 41, which is the executive summary. Page 42, the priorities. Introduction on page 43. And I thought the 2.2 and 2.3 were particularly interesting and important paragraphs there to help you with the guidance. The background page, and then page 44, objectives and targets. And the company structure, 6.7, which has been referred to by Councillor Woodward. Page 46, 47.
Well, that's interesting.
Give the paragraph number then.
7. Staffing. Are some of the employees of the company also employees of the council? Is it dual-hatted, are they?
Yeah, that's correct. So for example, our planning consultancy, we do major development, so large planning applications.
Yeah.
And we're required by law for a council employee to determine those planning applications or make recommendations to committee. So Barnet proved the business case for doing that. So essentially they are dual-hatted. So one they will be doing the processing of the planning application in an LWM hat. They'll take that off, put a council hat on, and then make a recommendation to the committee type thing. So,
yeah.
So there are very few who are double-hatted, but there are some, absolutely.
Yeah. So would they have 2 employment contracts, would they?
No, so we dealt with that again through legal advice. I'm using Trowers as well, a Birmingham-based legal firm. They are employed by LWM, but seconded for the purpose of the double-hatted element into the council.
Okay.
They know. You ever read the book Forward Thinking Hats? The name of the psycho. I think it was a psychiatrist. Anyway, page 47.
To get around something.
Outline of the which was there. Page 48. Page 49. Service development strategy. On page 50, there 8.3. I've made a mark against that for some reason. Hopefully means more work from parish council. That was my interest there to see what that might be. Hopefully parish councils will get more powers in after reorganisation, but we'll see. Leisure centre there mentioned. We'll look into that, don't worry.
What, swimming pool? Yeah.
Yeah, as it were. Page 51.
Chair, just, I've said it already, but I'll take the opportunity to say it again. I think it's a good move, and I think having a particular person there in that role is also a very good move. It's very enterprising, energetic young woman who will make a big difference in that area, I think.
Chair, so just to update members as well. So LWM has bought 7 houses during the course of 24-25, and those are starting to come on stream as part of our temporary accommodation offering as well, in addition to converting some flats above Ball Street. So we've got 5 temporary accommodation units there as well, which means, and as you know, many of you, the board has been asked to consider taking out a loan from the council to do more of the same. So I'd like to think by the end of 25-26 that we may have 15 or 20 properties that we directly own, which will take an awful lot of pressure off our temporary accommodation costs at the moment as well, and something that we're really quite excited about in LWM.
And there's somebody who'll be particularly excited if you achieve that and that, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Page 52. Page 53. 54. The ecology brokerage, which referred to earlier. Then the more technical stuff, the financial company, financial model, page 55. 56. 57. They always supported tax. We were doing so well. Page 58. 59. SWOT analysis. I like that.
Chair.
So, I mean, Councillor Woodward, yeah.
59 under key financial performance measures. I didn't understand that second bullet point under 18.1. I've got a big question mark. Return on capital employed, which looks at the profit against the combined equity and debt capital invested in the company. This is regarded as a good measure of the business. I don't know what that first sentence means.
Well, it's pretty obvious, but I'll let somebody else explain.
Hang on.
There's a lot more sentences I didn't quite understand, but that jumped out at me.
This is about how much. Sorry, I can't answer this. Surely this is just about how much cash we're actually putting into the business and how hard it's working for. Is it generating a decent percentage of it? If we're millions and millions into the business and it's only generating 0.5% return, that's not working hard enough for us. Whereas if we generate a 7 or 8% return, then we're doing all right.
I think the technical term is ROI, return on investment. I think it's perhaps the way it's been effectively described there is perhaps caused confusion. That's how I read it.
I don't know who wrote it, but it may benefit from between employed and which the word is a metric.
Yeah.
Might assist in clarity.
Just to be more precise, if I may as well, I believe.
Don't say, gentlemen, it's not a competition.
In terms of the definition, my apologies. What I meant is in terms of the return on investment of LWM in the last 2 financial years of trading is just under £750,000. That's £750,000 that has come back to the council, and we would not have had we not had this activity.
And how is that expressed as a percentage? What you normally describe as a return on investment.
Yeah, but over the 2 financial years, I haven't got a big enough brain to calculate that, I'm afraid.
I mean, because that is a very good measure of the effectiveness of any company.
Okay, thank you. There's only page 60 left, really, or 61 to be fair. Page 4.
Let's get, we were talking about the temporary accommodation, because there's also the accommodation which Spring currently manage. Is that a different batch of properties to what's going to be managed through the trading company?
Yeah, so we have an issue with temporary accommodation and a lack of available temporary accommodation in the district. So we are reliant on things like bed and breakfast and hotels and things. That is causing us significant pain. I can give you the figures if you'd like to in terms of how much we spent on temporary accommodation. Spring provides some of the solution at a more affordable level, and they also provide, importantly, a wraparound service to the people who are in temporary accommodation. So that there are many pieces to the solution, as it were, and they're part of it. But the problem is, of course, when we're putting people into temporary accommodation and we're having to pay commercial rates for that temporary accommodation, it very rapidly becomes very expensive. And I think in 24-25, we spent just over £500,000 on funding temporary accommodation of one sort or another. About 300,000 or 400,000 of that was unbudgeted expenditure.
So when you mentioned the 15, I think you said 15, does that include the Spring, or is that?
So that's ours. No, those are owned by the council or the company, those properties.
Yes.
But so again, if I may go into more detail, so the leader and I had a presentation, I think it was last week or the week before, from a local developer who've got access to properties, and they're offering access to those properties at either what is called local housing allowance rates or housing benefit rates. Very different to a bed and breakfast. And there's nothing wrong with bed and breakfast. They've been an absolute godsend. I was on call over the weekend, and were it not for a bed and breakfast, we would have had a real problem with a resident as well. So it's having the right mix and the right balance, but also being able to control the cost of it. So this local organisation, I think, will hopefully become part of the solution as well, because they're able to significantly reduce the cost of putting people into temporary accommodation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good. That's Trent, you had a question, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, as we're back, I think we're back now to the list: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So I had question about the weaknesses and then the threats. And it lists the TECL regulations under weaknesses. It made me wonder, it's mentioned a few times through the business plan, and we've mentioned it in conversation tonight. And I just wondered, is there an appetite to alter that that split, that 80-20 split? I'm just slightly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was getting a subtle kind of impression that there might be an appetite to change that split.
Yeah, so Chair, through you, so as Councillor Ball has alluded to as well, we have options. So if we want to maintain the 80-20 ratio, you're quite right, we would need to put more of the council's activity into it so that is balanced out. But there is no requirement to do that. As I say, if we're happy that actually we would like 50 or 60 or 80% of our income to come from non-council activities, we just need to be sure that the company is structured in the right way to allow it to do that. And its relationship with the council, we would effectively have to compete through procurement for council services alongside other bodies, but that shouldn't be a risk to us, I don't think. So I think it's a weakness, because actually, if we're not careful, we will restrict our ambition for the company if we're concerned about TECL all of the time. There is plenty of legal flexibility for us to do things differently as and when we require.
And in terms of potentially restricting ambitions, that connects possibly to the under threats legal challenge over state aid. Is that can you expand on that concern at all?
Yeah, so the company cannot get an unfair benefit from being owned by the council, which is why we pay for our office accommodation here, because anything other than that would look like we were getting a leg up sort of thing. Yeah. So we have a very good 151. I'm sure he's heard me say that a few times in the past as well, who looks after that for us as well, to make sure that anything, but what we do in terms of the space that we rent and the people that we use who've got council employee, we pay for that activity as well, to make sure that we're not being provided with state aid.
But does that limit the opportunities for the company competing perhaps outside the district to provide services if it's being funded by a local authority?
No, so I mean there are differences of opinions around TECL and how far you can go. So some local authorities believe that actually the TECL exemption allows them to the local authorities, other councils as well. We're being more cautious about TECL as well, and so we're restricting that element of our trade to LDC, Literal District Council. So if we wanted to sell more to other councils, and we absolutely do, we'd either have to consider setting aside TECL and competing on the open market like everybody else would do, or getting some more legal advice about how far TECL could go. We've taken a very cautious, risk-averse approach to TECL.
I'm not sure the point's ever been litigated, and the trick is not being the test case.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
exactly. Right, there's still discussions on that in the 80s as well, with councils and commercial enterprise and that, and there were reasonable debates, I think, and reasonable arguments. Colin, there you go.
Yeah, I'd like to explore the issue of housing a bit further, please. Really, increasing the supply of temporary accommodation is a good thing, because although bed and breakfast is a good, very short-term option for people, it's certainly not a good long-term option for people, 100%, particularly families. So we need to have sufficient properties that will accommodate families and others in temporary accommodation for a longer period. But what we also need is an increase in social rented housing across the piece, so that people can move out of temporary accommodation into permanent accommodation. Because one of the problems we have at the moment is people are stuck in temporary accommodation because there isn't the permanent accommodation for them to move into. So what plans are there within the LWMTS? Is that right?
That was off the tongue, doesn't it?
Got that right this time. What options are there for exploring, or through the council generally, in exploring an increase in social rented housing so that permanent?
Yeah, Chair, so we just say LWM because it's too much of a mouthful to be honest otherwise, and so we are looking at a rebrand to make that more clear, but it's just LWM. The housing and homelessness strategy that is being brought forward, I think, introduces a number of different opportunities for us to tackle social housing and other issues of housing as well. I think LWM could well become part of the solution for the council, but I think it's through that route that we need to identify all of the options, including our relationship with developers, direct. Some councils are building their own social houses, as Councillor Paul will know as well. So I think we, from my perspective, I would counsel us to get that strategy right and then see what role LWM can be and can play in delivering elements of it.
Okay. We almost got to the end. I just wanted to ask about any questions on the appendices, which there's quite a few, but I'm not going to go through those page by page if that's okay with you. We've given feedback. We've had those questions. There are two things to follow up from that. One is the result of the legal advice that the executive is or managing director is seeking, and the possibility then of looking at the minutes at some future meeting of the board will seem to reassure some members here. So on that basis, I think we can end that.
Chair, just on that minutes.
Sorry,
I think I welcome that, but I think perhaps they should be restricted because there will be confidential makeup of it. And I see no reason why it couldn't be restricted, just the members of the Overview Committee and the Audit Committee.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what would be exclusive to us? Look at that. Take advice.
Okay.
There may be nothing to hide on those particular minutes. That's to say nothing that's be an issue. I'll just keep it because I just kept going because I see you're all getting up yourselves. So I'll let you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. You can change your seat now, I think. Next item, agenda item 9, is the Councillor Community Fund, this year's achievements. And again, there's some quite lovely some of the reports there and the feedback that we've got on some of those awards, and it's great that we have that, and it's much appreciated by me locally and other members as well where they've received that. But who would like to start on this? Is it you, Chair? Wrong council.
Wrong.
Is it you, Cabinet Member?
That's fine, Chair. I will open with remarks. I think you've obviously got the paper in front of you. You've got the appendices A, B and C. For me, the scheme was much better, as you see, from previous years. And I think that is definitely encouraging. We still look at it more importantly on Appendix B is, of course, the feedback that we've had from and the benefit that we've had from community groups. And I think that's where I would really hope that we concentrate our minds on, because that is what it was all about, is getting those community groups, and not only just groups, but there's obviously other organisations that are well supported elsewhere with funding, but every bit of, I suppose, we've looked at it matters, and so I'm effectively delighted in the review and the feedback that has come back from the organisations, because that effectively, for me, says why we're doing it.
Thank you. Well, the recommendations again, first of all, which is to note and comment on the 2024 out-of-turn impact report set out in Appendix A and B, to note and comment on council feedback survey results set out in Appendix C, to note the proposed next steps in administration of the fund for 25-26 as set out in paragraphs 313 to 316. Well, the one question I've got just before others come in, if I may, which is regarding the background. Do we know, we haven't got a record anywhere, it might be useful perhaps next time if not, of those applicants who might have been told that no, you would not qualify for the community fund under our rules, but directed elsewhere, and if so, whether we know there was any success. I might be asking too much of the system, but it'd be useful to know if people said, okay, well, this is where you go, we love Litchfield or whatever, and then they are successful. You probably haven't got that unless you've got some anecdotes, maybe.
No, I do know that
The fair question is certainly.
do that follow up.
Yeah.
If it's not appropriate for this route, there are X, Y and Z,
Yeah.
but not that next step in terms of did they manage to access some monies, but we.
That'd be useful to know.
with that Unity fund for next year.
I think actually elected members, if they had the application and you've confirmed, the officers have confirmed that it couldn't qualify, but they themselves actually do follow that up, I suppose, really. That's, I'd say, our responsibility as elected members. So I'm going to go through the report.
Just bring Lucy in on that, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Liz.
I want to say there were some ineligible applications, for example.
Yes, I mean, you see, yeah.
Some private offices, so it was quite mixed as to why organisations weren't relevant, but those that were community and voluntary sector organisations and their smaller grassroots organisations were certainly guided as to other funding sources by the Community Foundation.
Remember, locally we had one that was would not apply. Would I mean, somebody sees possible money for an application, and there were some that got no chance at all because they're not really. I think it'd be risking your money if you gave them public money. I didn't have any this year, but we did have some of the previous year, I think. So if that's okay, sorry to miss out there, but go through the pages. 69, first page, and page 70. I mentioned that 3.5 there, the fund is promoted via text and videos throughout the council's website, which it was, and social media channels, as well by support Staffordshire Parish Council, Lichfield Live, and it's always up to members as well to try and get their publicity across. I always think a little notice in the parish village hall of that is helpful in rural areas, but I don't represent a rural area anymore. I'll take Colin first, and then Sue. I don't know who went.
Yeah, Chair, you moved on from page 69 very promptly.
That's it. Just 69 and then.
And it's 3.2. We continue the scheme for a further year for more assessment and review. And certainly my memory, when we discussed this a year or so ago, it was Councillor Robertson, MP, when he was still a councillor, and myself raised concerns about continuing with the community fund. The majority of the committee disagreed with us and said that it should continue. But my understanding was we would have a discussion now about whether we continue with it again. And I want explanation of whether that will be the case, because I still believe personally that setting aside £14,000, to do something specific, we could set up a means of supporting people to apply for grants and other organisations and other processes. Managing that centrally might be a better use of the money than focusing it on smaller groups, although I'm pleased to see the feedback from the groups. It clearly has had impact in a number of settings. So I'm somewhat more torn than I was a year or so ago. But I raise a question whether there's just the implicit assumption that this continues now in perpetuity, or whether it's reconsidered as doing something else going forward.
I think partly seeing what the report says and seeing whether you think that it has been worthwhile, and then deciding. But I don't know whether cabinet member, you've got a view on this at the moment.
Well, I have, and immediately I disagree with the views that were made last year. Really, and to me, there's a great advantage of getting to those great grassroots levels, and it's certainly, as I see it, with some unconstituted groups, they'll never get the opportunity for that kind of small funding. And so, in my view, is that this is something that we are able to offer, and allowing obviously the councillors to be connected within community groups and so forth. This is what I feel in terms of having a community strategy, power strategy that we have here. We give it obviously emphasis on our communities. Then we do need to obviously at some level always support that. And I think that's where we've got. I know from some of the funding that we funded Lichfield Litter Legends. I'm acutely aware that we have the Burntwood Litter Heroes, equally good, and there are many individuals out there actually working very hard. And it's in that sense that you're backing the community and saying thank you. And here's some funding that we've budget for. It's limited. I get. I would love it to be a lot more. I really would. Some other authorities within Staffordshire offer similar schemes, and it is more. But this obviously is something that we've put in the NTFS for future years. So to me, do I say let's do it? Well, I say yes. I would recommend that we do, and just ensure that the comments on the governance and the actually ability for us, what I would say, try and create a seamless application without too much bureaucracy thrown in it. That is something we'll look at for sure. But I just generally believe, look at Appendix B, and that tells me where the mind should be concentrated in, and not worry about what other authorities within our district are able to do or not do. This is Lichfield District Council, and this is what we should be offering our communities.
Okay. John?
I think it's a great scheme.
The pages,
and I think it would be something that should go forward personally. The question that I have is that we had Alex Farrell and I had applications rejected for kids' garden or self-sufficient children, and we weren't notified to say that they'd been rejected. If we had been noted, we could have been and told why. We could have diverted that money elsewhere. And I'm just wondering whether there's a better process of being able to let us know quicker as to whether things have been accepted, because the ones that have been accepted have been excellent. I mean, we provided new books for the school library, and I can tell you they are overjoyed at that. And we've done presentation with the children. They've chosen books that they want, and it's been absolutely superb. So I think it should continue to be.
I know the situation that you're referring to, and I think that without making excuses, but there was a breakdown in communication and the feedback. Now that is something that needs to be addressed on, because I do agree that if you were made aware, there's two things that could have occurred from that. One, the issue may have been sorted, and actually the rejection possibly isn't a rejection. It might have been just a question to provide some further information. And secondly, obviously, if the councillor had been informed, we could have clearly resolved it. I'm going to say within the report, there's one thing that was given to me was the any underspend I can look at and still retrospectively award within the delegation of the cabinet member. And I've had one incident where we've helped out St Matthew's Cricket Club, where the underspend from Highfield ward and some Hammerwich ward, so they're making it nearer to, because the rest of the Burntwood area was very, very successful, is that have awarded some funds to help them with some work that they needed to do that they couldn't, in terms of, I think, tree work and so forth. So we've awarded, delegated powers, £450 from the underspend. And I undertake that if we can look at the situation that Councillor Hill is referring to, which I have been made aware of, is that I can also look at it retrospectively and say, right, let's have a look at it and we can award those funds. The money is there for our communities. I wouldn't wish it not to get there. So if there's what I would consider a justified reason behind it, then please let me know and we will make sure. So there's still time to do that and we won't hesitate.
I have a problem with this, you see, because you said early on, and understanding this is where it's been, these sort of grants have been available for many years on other places, where it helps the local councillor to be known to the local community where they can. Now you're saying if they fail, if these councillors have failed to spend that money, the people they represent, you'll come in and spend it for them, in which case you're making the case, as I understand it, as Colin Ball was asking. Don't bother with the councillors themselves. Hang on, bother with the councillors themselves, the cabinet members can do it for them. That shouldn't be the case, should it?
Chair,
I'm asking you a question. Do you think that should be the case? Do you think that's okay?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you, no, don't give me an answer to just say yes or no.
No, you said okay.
I would like to qualify that my principal situation is the communities and the community groups. And if I feel that there has been some administration that hasn't necessarily gone correctly, then I would turn around and say that I will look at that community group as the prime concern.
Well, it's a case of Highfields. Then you said that.
Sorry, they approached the council for some assistance in tree work, which we hadn't got any funding, and we looked at the possibility of helping St Matthew's Cricket Club with some community funding that was available through the underspend.
When was it? And when was that application made? And I'm trying to find out why the councillors themselves did not get, or you passed it on to the councillors to deal with it.
I can't be responsible for the councillors not spending their money in terms of that's allocated.
There's no comeback either, is there?
Well, if you want to deny St Matthew's Cricket Club's funding.
No, you see, now I was waiting for that. No, I'm talking about generally. Councillors have a responsibility. They've got £300 there to spend of council. All you're doing, I've always said this to my people, all I'm doing is giving you your money back. So, we play the game, we give the money back, we try and direct them into places where it's useful. But you're saying if you don't do that, well, I'll come in and rescue you and spend that money anyway.
For a good
I just find it very odd.
For a good
I just find it very odd.
Not just on a willy-nilly, Chair.
I'm on page 70 anyway at the moment. So any else on question on page 70?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in general terms, I'm less equivocal than I was last year. I was subject to trying to be open-minded about whether it would work or not, but having experienced this year, it was a very straightforward process. I have to say it wasn't through any IT technological expertise that I have, but the officer who administered the arrangements through the Community Foundation was excellent and took all of that hassle away. There was an article on Lichfield Live at the weekend about what a shame it was that all of this money hadn't been spent. And I thought that was looking through the wrong end of the telescope, really, because 85% of the budget has been spent, which has meant that more than £12,000 has gone out to these little community groups, which is great. And I think that was sort of looking at the glass half empty rather than the glass half full. Those who didn't spend all of their allocation, Councillor Hill's told us of one reason why his allocation wasn't spent. Some didn't spend any of their allocation. I wondered if there's possibly a process to sort of nudge councillors along, even if it's later to say, are you going to spend your allocation? And for some, there were good reasons. I know, for example, that one councillor was going through some particularly distressing, life-changing events. So a very sick father who subsequently died, and it was just at the time that the community fund was operating. So absolutely understand the reasons why the focus must have been on the family. So I think it was slightly unfair that all of those councillors were named. Perhaps that's about transparency, but you know, come on, it's 300.
I think they should be named personally. I asked them to be named. I'd asked the question who they were anyway at this committee.
Yeah.
I also know that there are sometimes reasons why things don't happen.
Yeah.
The application was perhaps not correct in the end of the day and it was too late to change, that sort of thing.
And it might have been useful before this was publicised that to go out to all councillors and say, are there any particular mitigating reasons why you weren't able to spend any of your allocation? I know 2 of the councillors who were here as having spent zero. They were particularly vocal when we were looking at this last year about how important it was for rural wards to continue with this fund so that those small community groups could to get some assistance. But I was going to ask about the overspend because I'd heard wind of the.
What page are we on here? Because I want to go through page by page. I'm on page 70.
Okay, well, we're still on page 70, and it's about the actual budget. The
okay, thank you.
£14,000, £100 allocated, 12,050 spent. So there was an underspend of £2,050. Now, Councillor Cox has told us that 450 of that has gone. Can the rest of us dip into that and say, well, can I have a few more quid for exit group in my ward? You know, I do think it is very odd that if it's not spent, oh, well, we'll spend it on your behalf without any proper consultation or direction or criteria, unless you can tell me differently.
I will answer that again with if I can just before I answer that one regards to going forward with it, answering the question of G'ing up. I think one for me, just to quite the original report didn't name, the chair requested it and I agreed. So that's why it's in the report. Certainly going forward, is that yes, through training and so forth, we will make sure that we are trying to encourage the overall. And if there are councillors that need some assistance, that assistance will be well and truly guided and help with them. For no circumstances, you know, that people have had, is that the last thing that any of us should be doing is considering naming and shaming and witch hunting, because that is absolutely not what it's about. And I want to make that quite clear. Regards going forward the underspend, I hope that perhaps this time next year we won't be referring to any underspend, because those councillors will have looked at it and given the opportunity will look and see how they can do it, and they will be guided in many ways that if there isn't anybody within their ward, is there somewhere next door or something. It's the communities that I'm seriously looking at making sure. So it's there for the councillor, but the prime responsibility is for those community groups, one way or another, to receive some small funding, and especially reaching out those unconstitutionalised. So I'm aware of the underspend, and that onus then is on me, in a sense. Why is it myself? I actually have discussed, and I'm not saying it can't be I did actually discuss with officers that maybe the underspend is thrown back in the pot and we've got 20, 30 quid extra. So in a sense, that's not unreasonable to do. I think I worked it out that the initial underspend was an additional £40 per councillor. So in that underspend could go towards. So if committee was to feel that was a good idea, I can take it back, because it crossed my mind as a cabinet member that would be an easy solution by putting it back at the councillors, increasing it slightly because of the underspend on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Page 71 is proposed next steps, and Richard has explained it's in the MTFS, and there's the comments that are there. Right.
I was
Sorry,
going to make a comment on page 70 about the general thing, but a lot of the things I was going to ask have now been answered. But I was one of those that was sceptical at first about this funding, and certainly at the very beginning it didn't work as effectively because there were hiccups, and obviously always when something starting off, there are always going to be hiccups. I do realise now that how it has helped the community groups, and it's provided a little more for them to be able to help their service users or wherever it's gone. But I am concerned that, and I'm not picking on any councillor in particular, but that everybody understands the benefits of actually applying for this fund for their groups. And it might be that you do need to say something to councillors, all of us, about allocating the fund within their wards in future, because as much as we find that there are groups that can benefit, there's a lot that don't understand that and don't get through for that. But in general, I think that all councillors need to really think about spending that money, and questions that went with that I was going to ask has been covered during the conversation.
Move on to the appendix, but Colin.
Sorry, the last thing on page 71, 3.16, the fund will open for applications in May 2025 and another member briefing session will be held. Given that there has been underspend this year, and some have not spent all the money, some haven't spent any, wouldn't it be sensible to have the briefing before the scheme opens? That means it has to be happening in the next 4 weeks, which is going to be, I think, tricky given diary priorities. Therefore, would it also then be sensible to delay the opening of the scheme until we've had the briefing, so that those who may have struggled last year have got a better understanding how to do it this year?
Just target the briefing of the people who didn't spend it last time. If you know how to spend it this year, I don't need to be briefed again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I missed out on one because I thought I had 3 applicants. I chased the 2 applicants in the final 2 weeks. One of them put it in and one of them didn't. And I've just read
do a lot of chasing of it.
Yeah, so I've just checked on here, and the right organisation got it for not for what I thought I approved it for. So I approved for the radio. I gave them the other names of councillors for late night listeners' radios. They've got the money off them, 200 quid for that, and they've obviously thought, oh, we got it off them. Oh yes, it's a bit like, so they had an A board, which I think is lovely. But that's what I approved.
I think just asking really both questions there from Councillor Evans and Councillor Ball. I think obviously that yes, we're wanting briefing and further training on it to really iron out those issues that have been raised. I take your point on board about timing. This isn't necessarily set that it's got to be a May launch. It would probably be mid-May launch. If we were to obviously in the new municipal year have a training session during May, we can have it launched in June. I don't see any reasons why we can't do that. It's just a question of making sure that councillors are trained up and reminded, you know, gently what their responsibilities with the scheme, not the responsibilities of just necessarily.
Maybe tips that can be
shared as well. The scheme.
You'd have to a lot of you think there's money here, free money, but you still have to do quite a bit of chasing up. It's quite surprising, but you know, I've had that as well. So yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Did you want to come in?
I can't tell. We only got one good in. I can't tell where the voice comes from anymore.
Okay. I was trying to throw my voice. So if we're still on page 70,
see, that was it. See, you did the ventriloquist act, and I thought it was over there.
We're still on 71, aren't we? I think.
If you're saying we can be on 71.
Proposed next steps. It does say the fund will continue this year. So just picking up on Colin's point, he still has his reservations that it should or not. So I just thought I ought to say I support it, and in particular this time last year there was a line there about getting feedback from new councillors.
Yes,
because I hadn't been before.
True.
So my experience this year has been that it's worked very well and been very positive. I'd absolutely echo what was said about the Community Foundation, their administration of it. I thought was really good, and I didn't have any issues with how it was processed. I would agree that I had to do a bit of chasing of the people that were applying, which is surprising. But that was fine. But the actual operation of the scheme, Community Foundation, was excellent, and I agree that it seems to be a very effective way of getting it the most grassroots schemes. So I'm not in favour of a more centralised approach. I think it's actually worked very well.
Just before I bring Jane back in, you're quite right to remind me that yes, we did specifically say for new councillors, useful to know how you felt and found it, and it has been a big improvement for us old councillors we've found. So I'm glad you found that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jane.
Just to add to what Councillor Trent just said, he's put forward the proposal. I second that proposal, but can we possibly add in the additional money so that's also distributed that wasn't spent this year? I mean, we've been running it 3 years. It hasn't gone up. Inflation has. So it would perhaps bring it back in line with what we used to have.
Chair, can I just clarify what I did say earlier? It wasn't that I was opposed to the scheme. I was sceptical about it. My scepticism, as I said earlier, has reduced because I've seen the benefits that the community groups have got, and I certainly was quite happy to take £300 last year to give to the excellent community groups that operate within Cub Reward, and I made full use of that. And if I've given slightly more money this year, I'll make sure those community are equally supportive going forward.
Okay, Roger. He's only sceptical. He wasn't against. Okay, Kerry, please. Yes.
I just wanted to come in on comment that Councillor Ball made earlier about actually would we be better spending the money on, some kind of officer or capacity to help voluntary organisations with bids. Via our larger CVS funding programme, we do provide funding to Support Staffordshire, who are our local voluntary sector kind of capacity building organisation. And through that, we commission them basically to provide that type of support to voluntary and community sector organisations to support them in writing good quality bids for other funding sources as well. I think, as we mentioned as well, we do and are continually seeking to improve our signposting that we have as a district council to other funding sources as well. And I think just going to Councillor Checkland's point, we can absolutely look at the timing of the briefing, but what we're not proposing is whole scale changes to the fund. Constantly looking for continuous improvement and taking the feedback we have had from council that could improve the process. We absolutely will. And in terms of Councillor Hill's point, fortunately, the odd occasion where the process has broken down a bit, and again, we'll learn from that moving forward, but we're not proposing massive changes. So hopefully for those councillors who have had a positive experience and use all the money, you can get going straight away from May, and we can focus that briefing perhaps where it needs to be targeted.
Okay. Can I go on to the appendix now, page 75? Can I go on to there? What's the that? We gloss over 76 and 77, except to ask the question. The fund received 84 applications and 65 were approved, 19 have been rejected. Was there a general reason why the ones that were rejected were rejected? Was there a particular reason? Was there a common theme I was thinking of?
It was a mixture of weren't eligible groups, or they didn't supply the supporting documents, which was the case, and that had to be chased quite a bit. So it was predominantly not providing this
lack of information I gave in the first. I think that's where perhaps we can help us with the next year with, making that clear to applicants.
We have some parish councils, and it's subject to debate in terms of whether should we include parish councils. But I possibly think, well, parish councils do have their possibly not all, but certainly have their probably own schemes involved. And to me, that's where that sits. And this sits firmly with the Lichfield District Council. So not having any crossover. There was and I was very grateful to there's a couple of schools. We were happy initially with PTAs, but we also had some applications from the schools that came in, which was initially something that we weren't looking at funding. But then when you look at academies, well, actually they have to look at where they can get their funding from as well. So it's I think that flexibility then kicked in, and I know that Councillor Woodward and Councillor Norman were able to put what I thought, when I was informed of it, was a very good scheme that I thought would actually benefit, and therefore, you know, supported the application as well. So, and I think that's what is important about then having if there is a question about a particular application, that I can make that you know, support it. In most cases I would, because I put the community first.
Next page, 78. Oh, thank you, Jamie.
Okay, I'm on. Is this appendix B?
Sorry?
Still appendix B.
Yes, yeah.
Can I ask a question, please? So I received loads of emails in regards to funding, and I can see on appendix B there are many councillors who gave funding to the same group. So my question is, do you let the councillors know that there are other councillors, multiple? Because when I ask, they let me know. Actually, I've also asked these number of councillors, but then that means that some smaller groups, or maybe some organisations, they may have missed out on the funding because maybe this number of councillors have given their funding to this group. Like, no, it's like.
I think it's timing, isn't it? You know, so you did get that way. You get quite a few, and they should be all informed that there is an application in for this is what we changes are recommended last time. That or we're all know about that. But you might want to hang back because there may be other smaller groups aren't like coming forward. Yeah,
it's not fair. So like other groups have opportunities rather than the same groups have this. For example, like it's 500, 100, but then some other groups who want to play, maybe they last minute or maybe they missed out. We spread it so that rather than one, can you limit or not limit?
I think it's about timing, in fact, really. We can say, well, I'm making a decision yet, and then you can look at those other applicants coming in. I don't know there's another way around it. The council owners.
I think last year there was a group that applied to every Lichfield city councillor. And it wasn't clear that they'd applied to everybody. It was an individual request to each person. So technically, I think they got 17 applications in.
Yeah, yeah.
I think let us have a ponder on that one. So, almost you don't want to put restrictions on it because again that could.
You don't want to, but the smarter organisations are in there straight away.
It's perhaps more about how we can better information share what's coming through with councillors.
And Chair, I mean, I'd spent all my money early on, but these organisations that came forward were, as Councillor Chick said, the smarter and the bigger organisations, and they weren't the organisations that this fund is directed at. And I think that may mean that some of those organisations the fund was directed at missed out.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where everybody's coming from. I mean, I obviously was able to award £300 myself to groups. I made a conscious effort of actually making sure that it was spread. Because obviously I have two distinct communities of Armitage with Handsacre and Kings Bromley, very distinct individual communities with obviously various different needs. So I was personally involved with the schemes in a sense of making sure that I was looking where I would like to think the money could be allocated, and from that. So I possibly was proactive in sorting out some groups, but one group that I'm quite happy then we divided up between the three ward councillors was the drop-in at Kings Bromley, and or you know, very unconstitutionalised. They pay for the hire of the village hall, and they basically pay for the coffee themselves and everything else, and it just basically has given them coffee and tea for 12 months. And we had difficulties in terms of the, getting round the fact that that there was no bank account or this, that, and the other. But with the conversations that we had and working with the foundation and myself, we crossed the line, and it's been an absolute godsend to the community. So there are obviously obstacles that come our way, but I think we just get on the phone and talk them out, and making sure that we've got that communication.
The local council involved, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll have to move on because I'm aware of the time. Page 78. I'd like to come to page 78, please. You've got churches there quite high, but churches covers, I think it covered lunch clubs that have been run by churches and say graveyard dealing, things like that. So any comments on that graph at all, or any questions on that page? If not, thank you. Page 79. Like going through lots of individual ones. There's page 79 is a list of the awards. Page 80.
Page 80, just a quick point. There's a correction needed on one of mine, which is £200. If you add up all of mine that are in this appendix, it comes to £400. I'm the only councillor that spent 400. It was actually 100 to transition, and then the other two were.
There's 100 there for that.
I think that probably represents within the councillors list. You only spent 300.
No, it does. Yeah.
So that would.
Okay. 81. Comment on that?
Can I just make a general comment? This feedback is just fantastic.
Yep.
It's really, really good to read. The really positive reactions to it. So, the general comment.
I do think it is. I think it's great. Page 82. 3. 74 quid. Can you believe it? Page 80. Page 84. Was engaged. Page 85. 86. I'm a bit confused on page 87. It might be something to Martin there. The Whittington Parochial Church Council awarded £100, £300 cast Andrew Rushton. Which is it? Do we know? Is there some target there? I know he spent all his money, but do we know what the reason is?
We'll check that typo. But
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. 88. It's interesting what people are getting awards to pick up the litter that the local council has been dropping, presumably everywhere. That to keep them, sorry. Page 89, all on YouTube, aren't we? But stop saying. Page 89. I just mentioned this one on the St John's Community Church. What I'm hoping for, this is not on our remit, but for the town council to pick this bill up in future, so that every 4 or 5 years we get the memorial clean, so that'll be some more money available for other opportunities. 90. 91. 8 night listeners. Well, Radio 3, you don't need to.
That was the
Book.
took me 100 quid and spent it on someone else. Something else. But
92.
it's a great write up about the bloke at the bottom. So
Okay, very good. 92, 93. Long one there, isn't it? 93. On the Lions Club, yeah. 94. Kings Bromley, wherever that is. It's 95. Seven. There's the survey there.
Chair, isn't it disappointing that less than half of our councils actually participated in the survey?
Yeah.
It's just amazing, isn't it? But you know, I mean, yeah. Because I mean that's what helps the officers to the feedback and I don't think.
For appendix C, the two pie charts are the same. Are they supposed to be the same? The majority of the blue and the red one, first and fourth pie chart.
Blue is pretty clear. Really close to. No, I'm not. What, sorry.
So appendix C,
Yeah.
the first pie charts and the
Yeah.
fourth pie chart. They're the same. Is it supposed to be the same? Just want to clarify.
Well, the
Yes, it is.
No, that's another type.
I thought so. I just want to make sure later.
Yeah.
Yeah, 98. And I've actually got to the end. So, yeah. Recommendation, but there's feedback, wasn't it, basically? Alternative options, recommendations, note to comment, We've done, I think, quite a lot for the next steps. We just seem to be sympathetic to it carrying on. That's yeah, very good.
The Community Foundation.
I beg your pardon.
With the Community Foundation running it rather than the council.
Right, yeah.
We'll continue with the community foundations. And just before the item's finished, there was a reference to the an issue being with the system at Community Foundation being down. That was a national issue with the whole setup, and we got caught up in the wrong time. But we managed to process that as best as we could. But that was at the time unforeseen.
No, that's okay. We
It should be a clear run this time.
a whole lot better this time. And the stuff that you communicate with were very good. So thank you for that. I've just got the work programme now. And I've highlighted the ones for the next meeting. There's a few more next meeting, so keep an eye on the time then. Health matters as usual, though there hasn't been there won't have been a meeting, so that I won't say leave it on, but nothing to report. Notes from task groups, any, there'll be some information there, I think. Empty homes policy, there, definitely. Greenway project, wherever that is. Homelessness and rough sleeper strategy, I think that was delayed. The local government reorganisation, oh, okay, that's good. Based working. Statement of community involvement, the youth council engagement update. So we get the youth council report.
Do we know when? Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Do we know when youth council will come back? I know the officers were doing research on it.
Well, it's the next meeting. That's what
Oh, is it?
understood you.
Is it the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll just read them out. All the ones for the next meeting. Just read them out.
That column only said the next year, so I wasn't sure if that was the very next meeting.
Oh, that one on me. Well, the author wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think that's identified 6 major items. By my reckoning, that's 6 major items for the.
Yeah, I just said we've got to get moving next time.
Yeah, so that's a concern.
Let's try and practice before we get to the meeting.
So yes, sorry, Councillor Trent, you are correct. That column is for 2025 to 2026, not necessarily everything for the June meeting. So we'll work with office to determine which of those items will come to which meeting throughout that year. In regards to
consultation with the chair,
of course. In regards to the youth council item, I was talking to the cabinet member the other day about this in terms of when we next bring that back, and I think the understanding was that it would be June that we would bring that back to ONS.
Yes,
just before the meeting.
Yeah, before they go on holiday.
Through you, I'm thinking we should have only 4 major items.
Well, I'll have a look at that. Leave that with me, and we'll sort that out. What we've agreed that we keep a limited number of items on there. Well, need to judge to see what the report's going to be like.
Can I just mention to members, Chair, in the last Local Government First magazine, there was an interesting article on youth forums. So it'd be useful to have a look at that before we discuss youth council at the next meeting.
I'd ask Will to rewrite the. Oh. He would know about this report. No, he's drawing your attention. You've got to read it, haven't you? Even this for councillors only.
It's on the website.
Confidential, really.
Can I just raise one point? In the column that Will was referring to, what we've reviewed today about the trading company, the business plan, the accounts, there's no tick for next year. So I think that's an area it should be. Yeah.
All right, there should be one there. On a regular basis, so yes, there could be one there.
Okay. Oh, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for missing me out of my last usual trip to Wales on the way back, but I'll forgive you.
Can we get the clock changed?
Yeah. So I can't put it back at the end of the room on that.
We don't want. It's okay.
Thank you. Automatic.